The Life of Meliodas, the Seven Deadly Sins. Meliodas is the dragon sin of wrath and captain of the Seven Deadly Sins, formerly the owner of the renowned tavern Boar Hat, and is the main protagonist of the series. His sacred treasure is the Demon Sword Lostvayne, and his inherent power is full counter. He was also the head of the Ten Commandments as Meliodas the Love and a former member of Stigma. He's the older brother of Zeldris and the eldest son of the Demon King. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Meliodas. Before we begin, we publish a new video every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all of our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. 3,000 years ago. The majority of Meliodas' childhood is unknown, but in the past, Meliodas was trained by Chandler and was the leader of the Demon Clan's 10 Commandments, bestowed with the commandment of love, and regarded as one of the most likely to become the next Demon King for his strength and ruthlessness. His reputation led to him being greatly feared by the enemies of the Demon Clan, with even the 4 archangels of the Goddess Clan fearing and acknowledging his power. He stood as the Demon King's favorite son as well as true and worthy heir, renowned as the vilest, evil, and most terrifying demon in all existence, his power second only to the Demon King himself. At some point, Meliodas met a young Merlin and saved her from the wizards of her birthplace who were chasing her for running away. Meliodas frequently took care of Merlin during her solitude, yet never returned the child's feeling of love. Upon meeting and falling in love with the goddess Elizabeth, Meliodas chose her over his clan, abandoning his title as leader of the 10 Commandments as well as his commandment, officially betraying them in the process. This power imbalance he created led into the Holy War, a war that he at some point decided to participate in, siding with new allies of the Goddess Clan and their allies, the giants, fairies, and humans. During the war, Meliodas became friends with a human named Ro. That same day, Ludociel carried out his plan to eliminate the 10 Commandments using innocent demons as live bait to drive them out. Meliodas, together with Droll and Gloxinia, arrived at the battle that had been unleashed between the Commandments and the Archangels. Meliodas then freed Elizabeth from the Ark where she had been locked up. During the last days of the war, the rulers of the demons and goddesses and their parents, the Demon King and the Supreme Deity, had both had enough of the defiance of their children and temporarily put their rivalry aside and worked together to punish Meliodas and Elizabeth. Personally confronted by his godlike father, Meliodas could do nothing against the Demon King and was effortlessly overpowered and killed alongside Elizabeth, who was confronted and equally hopeless against the Supreme Deity. However, their punishment was far worse than death. The Supreme Deity cursed Meliodas with immortality as his punishment, reviving him every time he died in exchange for his emotions being consumed more and more until returning to be the bloodthirsty demon he once was. The Demon King cursed Elizabeth with perpetual reincarnation, forcing her to live human lives in which she would always reunite with Meliodas and die right before his eyes over and over again. While not knowing why he survived unscathed from their battle, he saw Elizabeth dead and cried out as he held her corpse. With the war over, he wandered a shattered Britannia and eventually came across a human girl from a savage tribe who looked like Elizabeth, minus the wings. Although she didn't remember it, Meliodas became very close to her, and one day she regained the powers of her previous life. When Meliodas told her about it, the girl recovered all of her memories. Soon, though, Meliodas learned of the curses they had been placed under and promised her that he would work to release them, and watched Elizabeth die again. Since then, Meliodas continued to meet and fall in love with Elizabeth's reincarnations, getting to know all of them. Because of the curse of the Demon King, Meliodas saw each of them die before his eyes. One of them was a child who died in a house fire after getting her memories back, and another was a young lady who died of old age without ever remembering anything, passing on peacefully. 27 years ago. He would continue this cycle for almost 3,000 years until he went to and was employed into the service of the Holy Knights in the Kingdom of Danafor. There he had a brief encounter with Merlin, hoping she could give him a way to break the curse. When she suggests releasing the 10 Commandments to use the power that Zeldris borrowed from the Demon King, Meliodas refuses to know the danger he would represent, and that Zeldris would never agree to help him. It was in Danafor that Meliodas eventually met a slave girl named Liz from an enemy kingdom of Danafor, later revealed to be a reincarnation of Elizabeth. Subsequently sentenced to death, Meliodas set her free and personally offered to fight on her behalf if anyone objected. He later took Liz to his house where they lived together, often groping her chest, to which she reacted violently. Later, Liz grew closer to Meliodas and became his lover, with him calling her the most important person to him. However, Frodran managed to escape his sealing after the people of Danafor broke the seal, and he eventually attacked Danafor, nearly destroying it in his attempt to open the coffin of eternal darkness. Frodran murdering Liz right in front of Meliodas left the latter enraged. Meliodas later apologized to Liz for not saving her, but Liz told him that they would meet again and not to forget what they fought for. After seeing Liz die, Meliodas' rage caused his immense power to go out of control. This explosion of power wiped Danafor off the face of the world and critically injured Frodran, leaving him at the brink of death. After this, Meliodas found the dragon handle and a baby that was the reincarnated Liz. The couple is discovered by the great holy knight Zaratras, who tries to help them, but Meliodas warns him not to touch his woman. When the baby Elizabeth was adopted by the king, Bartra Leonis, Meliodas requests to become a Leonis holy knight to stay close to her. At some point, Bartra had a premonition of the creation of the 7 deadly sins. Therefore, using the prophecy as a guide, Merlin appears revealing that she had already found all of the members, including Meliodas and herself. Meliodas decides to unite all of them to defeat the 10 Commandments if the goddess's clan seal was ever broken. At some point in time, Meliodas, intending to recruit Bon, arrived at the convict's cell where he was warned by the guards of Bon's immortality. Bon, believing that another execution was to be performed, stated that he would merely sit as he was executed, only to find out that a child had entered. Bon refused to join Meliodas, and to Meliodas' declaration that he will then take him out by force, engages him in battle. The battle resulted in Bon being punched out of his cell, and Bon, having become extremely excited, requests that the battle be continued. Meliodas responds that to do so, Bon would have to join him, with Bon grinning widely at the invitation. Meliodas also recruits King after he was arrested for false crimes, telling him that he is a wonderful king for sacrificing himself for his people. 26 years ago. When the deadly sins were not yet formed, Meliodas finds Diane being bothered by a group of knights called the Knights of the Golden Wheats. After he arrives and knocks one out, both the knights and Diane tell Meliodas to leave. The knights also say that Meliodas should not help Diane since she's a monster, to which Meliodas responds that it was wrong for them to pick on a girl. He defeats them all with ease after the rude comments. Meliodas later asks Diane if she had been frightened, which surprised her since she was bigger than him. This eventually led to her falling in love with him due to his kindness and treating her like she was a normal person. At some point during this period, Gother is also recruited into the 7 deadly sins. However, the exact details of his recruitment, as well as whether he was recruited by Meliodas himself or by Merlin, are currently unknown. Also around this time, Meliodas and Merlin meet Escanor and convince him to join as the final member of the sins. With this, the formation of the 7 deadly sins becomes complete. After the formation of the 7 deadly sins, Meliodas and his team participated in various missions. 23 years ago. At one point in time, the Sins were resting after defeating a tyrant dragon when Bon took an interest in Meliodas' broken blade and attempts to steal it. The latter uses his mysterious Hellblaze to give Bon a scar that can never heal despite his regenerative abilities. Later, Meliodas met Dreyfus and Henriksen while eating and training with his fellow Sins and commented that their superior Zaratras was invincible. Henriksen responds to the claim by saying he was being modest. Meliodas compliments Dreyfus' sword skill, which made the latter happy, and begins to respect the captain of the 7 deadly sins. 21 years ago. Before they were infamously framed, Meliodas was training Gilthunder until Gilthunder grew upset as he believed he would never become as strong as the deadly sins or his father. But Meliodas told him to ditch his negative attitude, and Margaret came and told him the Way of the Knight creed. Margaret told Gilthunder that he should be himself and not like the deadly sins or his father, and she believed that Gilthunder would be the kindest and strongest holy knight someday, which cheered up Gilthunder. However, the next day, Gilthunder came running towards Meliodas and told him to run away with the others. Meliodas was lost at Gilthunder's request and told him to explain everything, but Gilthunder told him something terrible was coming, and if he told anybody, bad things would happen, and Gilthunder would have no idea what to do. Meliodas told Gilthunder to calm down by hitting his head and asked him what he wanted to do, to which Gilthunder answered that he needed to protect Margaret, but he had no idea how to do it. Meliodas taught him a charm that could cheer him up whenever he felt sad or terrible, which is to say out loud that he was stronger than any of the 7 deadly sins. Gilthunder said it, to which Meliodas pointed out that he should feel better soon. Meliodas embraced Gilthunder, told him he shouldn't cry, and if he were in trouble, he would come to his aid. When they were still an active and commended group of knights, they were supposedly summoned to an old castle after defeating the Troll Queen and destroying the great druid altar. As the Sins were inside the castle, they discussed among themselves the reason behind the order they received, as Meliodas complained that they should be attending Leonis' National Foundation Day festival and go drinking, only for King to remind his captain that he was always drinking anyway. After Deanne and Merlin speculated whether their superior might reward or scold them for their last mission, Meliodas had already decided that it was a scolding and reminded his team to attend the festival later, much to the team's chagrin. As they entered the room, they discovered the great holy knight Zeldris completely skewered to death. Soon they were framed for the murder and then surrounded by over 300 knights of the kingdom. As Leonis' holy knights attacked the castle, Meliodas gave his team his last orders to disperse and regroup later to figure out the cause of Zeldris' death, which everyone obeyed and separated while fighting their way out. In the aftermath, a little girl tries to help the Deadly Sins escape, but ends up getting heavily injured, which leads to Meliodas unleashing his rage once more, but soon knocked out by Merlin and sealed away his strength. But Meliodas soon forgot the event, which leads him to suspect the existence of a traitor. Once Meliodas awoke, he came to meet Hawk is a pig, not a hawk, within a cave that was close by to Camelot, as the two ended up speaking with one another, where Hawk mentions that he felt like he used to fly in the sky, thinking he was a dragon back in his past life when Meliodas thought he was Wandel. The two argued over Hawk's name until Hawk mentioned a restaurant called Pig Leg where Hawk loved the leftovers, which led to Meliodas and Hawk teaming up to work together since Meliodas can't work as a knight anymore. They decided to open a bar on Hawk Mama's back named Boar Hat after the restaurant Hawk mentioned by having Meliodas sell his sacred treasure, which he felt bad about since King Bartra had given him this weapon. Since then, Hawk and Meliodas have become business partners, Meliodas being the owner while Hawk is the cleaner as he could eat the leftovers. Introduction Arc. Meliodas is first seen in the Boar Hat serving his disgusting meals and then ordering Hawk to clean up the vomit of his customers. Moments later, the infamous Rust Knight enters the bar, scaring all the customers who believed him to be one of the 7 deadly sins, and collapses moments later, which reveals him to be a female. The woman soon wakes up, is offered terrible food, and is questioned as to what she was doing in armor. As she begins explaining that she's searching for the 7 deadly sins, a few knights, having been informed by the villagers of the Rust Knight, demand that Meliodas and the Rust Knight come out. The young man and Hawk do so quickly and anger the knights by the latter's pretending to be the Holy Knight. As the woman flees into the woods, they notice her and chase her. She's quickly rescued by Hawk and Meliodas, who ask her to continue her answer. She then explains that she was searching for the 7 deadly sins in order to stop the Holy Knights, who a few days ago had orchestrated a coup d'etat and had taken over control of the kingdom. She also reveals who the 7 deadly sins are. Abruptly, the cliff the 3 of them are standing on is cut off by Twiggo. Meliodas, however, rescues all of them. After he does so, Twiggo notices the woman's earring, and then soon realizes that her true identity is Elizabeth, the kingdom's 3rd princess. When the knight attacks them, Meliodas rescues her. He does so again when she gives up her life in an attempt to not involve Meliodas in her matters. Smiling, Meliodas reveals his name, and thus, his identity. As Twiggo attacks them again, Meliodas repels the attack and, declaring his title as the Sin of Wrath, then again repels Twiggo's attack with his broken sword, thus defeating him. Meliodas, explaining that he's also searching for other deadly sins, offers Elizabeth to accompany him on his journey, an offer that she tearfully accepts. Hired as a waitress of the Boar Hat, Elizabeth is given a new set of clothes by Meliodas. She then questions him as to the crime he had committed and doubts whether or not he's an actual criminal. He initially jokes about the reason, but in the end he doesn't properly answer her. Meliodas, Elizabeth, and Hawk soon reach Burnia, a village famous for its ale made from the village's famous river. They, however, find the river to be completely dried. Upon finding a large crowd of men trying to pull out a sword, the 3 discovered that the previous day a holy knight had sealed the river's underground water supply, preventing the creation of Burnia Ale, the town's primary source of income. While the men unsuccessfully try to pull out the sword, a boy named Mead starts boasting about his friend from the 7 deadly sins. His comments only serve to further enrage the villagers, who begin blaming Mead for their crisis. Meliodas takes Mead to the Boar Hat and feeds him in return for information on his friend from the 7 deadly sins. This, however, turns out to be a hoax, or a lie. It's a lie. Elizabeth, having learned that Mead was the one who angered the Holy Knight, manages to have him tell her the reason he did so by narrating him an episode of her childhood. The four then watch from the window as two knights inform the villagers that if the sword is not removed by that day, their taxes will be multiplied by 10 times. As all the men, now including Mead, try their best to remove the sword, Meliodas, after drinking some Burnia ale, removes the sword with ease in order to pay for his drink, which causes the damned water to gush up like a fountain. That evening, as the villagers celebrate in Boar Hat, Meliodas instructs Elizabeth to take her job lightly, since it was her first time being a waitress. During the celebration, Meliodas senses Gilthunder, the aforementioned Holy Knight's spear, heading for the village and goes out. Outside, he finds Elizabeth, who, having made many mistakes while waitressing, had run outside while crying. You know, normal Elizabeth stuff. Encouraging her, Meliodas stops the spear, but only after being pushed back a large distance. He then hurls it back at Gilthunder, which leads to the destruction of the entire fortress and the Holy Knight's realization that the 7 deadly sins are indeed still alive. The next morning, Meliodas suggests that they should leave the village immediately and continue their journey, since it would be more dangerous for the villagers if they stayed there. Forest of White Dreams arc. Having learned of even holy knights avoiding the Forest of White Dreams in Burnia, the group of 3 travel there, speculating that there might be a deadly sin hiding inside. After walking in the forest for more than 3 hours and losing their sense of direction, the 3 find multiple copies of Hawk, all claiming to be the real one. Meliodas mercilessly defeats all the copies, including the real one, but then discovers similar copies of Elizabeth. Each of them declares to do anything that they are real, and Meliodas then instructs them to jump as high as they could. All of them, except for the real one, do so since Elizabeth's panties were stolen by Meliodas before, and she was too embarrassed to jump. Defeated, the copies show themselves as prankster imps and retreat towards a giant girl who's revealed to be Deanne, the serpent's sin of envy. They then apologize to her for allowing a holy knight to come through, having believed Meliodas to be one. Immediately after being woken, Deanne lifts Meliodas with her hand only to cuddle him and cry tears of joy as soon she realizes his identity. When Elizabeth introduces herself to Deanne as traveling with Meliodas, Deanne jumps to the conclusion that she and Meliodas are a couple and throws a tantrum. Meliodas, after calming her down, explains to her the reason that he and Elizabeth are traveling together. He then proceeds to begin a discussion about the day 10 years ago, informing her that he has almost no memories of that day, much to Deanne's surprise. A few brief moments later, Hawk notices a gigantic thundercloud in the sky. A lightning bolt from it then binds all of them, and the assailant is shown to be Gilthunder. As Gilthunder walks toward them, Elizabeth explains Gilthunder's identity and that he was a brother figure to her, but soon realizes his intentions. After Gilthunder leads the way, ending her interruption, he, pointing his sword at Meliodas' neck, expresses his desire to avenge his father and also to prove that he's surpassed him. Meliodas and Deanne easily break Gilthunder's immobilization spell themselves, with Meliodas instructing Deanne not to interfere. Gilthunder attacks first with a lightning bolt. The Sin of Wrath repels the spell, only for the Holy Knight to dodge and move behind the ladder, slashing him from behind and causing him to fall to the ground. Meliodas, seemingly in his last moments, asks for the whereabouts of the other deadly sins as his last words. Gilthunder answers to him the location of Fox's Sin of Greed, Bon, and the Grizzly's Sin of Sloth, King, the former being imprisoned in the Baste Dungeon, and the latter having perished in the capital of the dead. As he's told so, Meliodas quickly jumps back up, revealing that he had tricked Gilthunder into revealing this information. The Holy Knight refuses to stop their battle and repeatedly attacks Meliodas very quickly. He continues his attacks, but is suddenly lifted by Deanne with one hand. Gilthunder's attempts at escaping her grasp are unsuccessful. Meliodas watches as Deanne flings him out of the forest. You know, not the most threatening antagonist when you can just yeet him 5,000 miles away, but, you know, I'm not a writer. Meliodas later decides to head towards the Baste Dungeon, leading Elizabeth to object to this decision, citing his grave wound as an impediment. Though assuring her that he's alright, he then immediately collapses. Good job. Baste Dungeon arc. Meliodas is taken to Dalmari, a town near the Baste Dungeon, where he's treated by Dr. Dana. Later, Dana has Meliodas drink some medicine he prepared himself, which is later revealed to have been a deadly poison, with Dana being revealed to have made a deal with Golgius. When the Holy Knight appears and then tries to grab Meliodas' broken sword, however, Meliodas is shown to still be alive, but with his eyes being mysteriously colored black and with a strange black-colored symbol on his forehead. As Golgius tries to pull the sword, Meliodas declares that he would not let go of it even if he dies, and that this was the only way he could atone for his sins, while releasing an aura which frightens Golgius into fleeing. Meliodas seems to have returned to normalcy soon after this. When Elizabeth then questions him about his wound, it's revealed to have already healed, something that puzzles even him. The three then take chase to Golgius, soon finding him due to Hawk's sense of smell. Much to his surprise, Golgius immediately surrenders. Meliodas, however, notices the blades that Golgius discreetly threw and blocks them. Soon after, Dana also finds Golgius and is killed in order to censor the two's deal, with Elizabeth, worried, running towards the doctor. As Golgius disappears after his attack is blocked by Meliodas, he confirms that his ability is teleportation. The three then soon escape and enter an abandoned building, where Meliodas slashes his sword in the air toward the door, comically claiming it was a magic spell. They wait inside when Golgius suddenly appears behind Meliodas, but falls for the Sin's trap, a cut on the floor of the entrance, and falls to the bottom of the building. There, the Deadly Sin reveals that Golgius' ability is actually transparency, and how he discovered so. He then attacks his opponent at point-blank range. Meliodas then questions Golgius about the person who ordered him to bring him the broken sword and Elizabeth, only for Golgius to escape due to a distraction. After he leaves, Elizabeth goes toward the dying Dana, who apologizes, explaining that he only wanted to rescue his daughter and, lamenting his inability, dies. Elizabeth blames herself for this, since if she had not found Meliodas, then he wouldn't have been put in danger and Dana wouldn't have died. Meliodas, in response, questions whether her resolve to protect the kingdom's citizens was as weak, declaring that he would fulfill his promise even if she were to die. He proceeds to inform her of the inheritance of the principles of an individual. Not long after, Meliodas and Hawk head to Baste, leaving Elizabeth in Dalmari due to dangers. She, however, joins the two herself and, encouraged by Meliodas' speech, responds that though she has no power, she'll continue to fight for the people, even if he were to die. As they walk, they encounter Diane, who seems to have no memories of defeating Frisia's insects and leaving for Baste. Diane tries to recollect the events, and Meliodas then determines to rescue as Senate was their main priority. Suddenly, he finds Diane to be attacking him, immediately realizing that she's under an illusion. He flees along with Elizabeth and Hawk, and upon finding two civilians walking nearby, takes them along too. As the three and the two frightened civilians hide, Meliodas also falls under Ruin's hypnosis when he tries to look at Diane, which makes him see Ruin in her place the same way she sees Ruin in his. Thinking he's attacking Ruin, he attacks Diane, which begins their battle. Their battle is only stopped after Elizabeth manages to remove the origin of Ruin's illusion, the bell on his staff. He, enraged by this, charges toward the heavily injured Elizabeth, but is stopped by Meliodas, the illusion now having stopped. Meliodas tells the unconscious Elizabeth that he accepts her resolution, as Ruin attacks him. Ruin expresses his disbelief at the kingdom being frightened of a small child. After two of Meliodas' punches, Ruin exclaims that his soft fist would not even scratch his armor, and suggests that he draw his sword. Meliodas remains unscathed and breaks Ruin's armor. He's then unfazed when Ruin then hardens his abdominal muscles as his armor and proceeds to easily defeat him with a punch that plunges his arm into the Holy Knight's stomach. Later, when Diane, Meliodas, Hawk, and Elizabeth, who's sleeping inside Diane's bag, enter the dungeon, they encounter Senate fleeing from Ban, as he appears soon behind her. Initially appearing very tense despite their reunion after 10 years, Ban and Meliodas are shown to get along very well and greet each other with multiple high fives at great speed. They then energetically start arm wrestling, the mere force of which begins destroying Baste. Both argue their arm wrestling scores as the dungeon continues to collapse, them apparently unfazed by all this. After it's fully destroyed, Ban states that he's glad to meet Meliodas again. The group, Ban, and the people who are imprisoned in Baste, including Senate, return to Dalmari. Soon after, Meliodas enters Dana's house, but is surprised to discover that Dana is mysteriously alive. The doctor reveals that he knows nothing about this strange phenomenon, and showing the deep wound to have neatly healed, points out that it was similar to Meliodas' sword wound, which had also healed and left a scar in a similar way. Senate then interrupts, questioning the reason her father was nearly killed and she imprisoned. When he answers, she tells him that poisoning Meliodas wasn't his fault, but the Deadly Sin's own fault, since the group were criminals. Dana, however, argues against this, explaining that Meliodas never blamed him and even selflessly rescued her. He then offers a token of his gratitude in a meal. At night, during the party, Ban is formally introduced to the bedridden Elizabeth. Not long after, Senate notices crossing shooting stars in the sky and brings them to everyone's attention. Capital of the Dead arc. The characters begin their journey towards the capital of the dead from Dalmari town. Gradually, the characters arrive at a lonely village that is said to be closest to the capital of the dead. Meliodas decides to open the Boar Hat bar in order to earn some money for food and begin giving everyone rolls. When Ban begins complaining about working, he reveals that he returned Senate her dagger so they couldn't sell it for money. When everyone was about to begin working, though, they discover that Ban had escaped. At the Boar Hat, Meliodas tells a past story about Ban and King and states that they're an unlikely dynamic duo. Meliodas and the rest begin searching for Ban and discover him fighting against King. He suddenly appears and interrupts the battle by knocking Ban on the head with a cup. Meliodas and Diane then easily notice King, although he quickly runs away. Back at the Boar Hat, Ban cooks a delicious meal and requests for the location of the capital of the dead from Ellen and her brother Luigi, who reveals that King has also requested the same thing. The discussion about the capital of the dead continues, and the characters are told that the village is actually the entrance. However, you can't go there just because you desire to. Out of the blue, Ellen recites a riddle that she always heard from her neighbor. A priceless memory shared with the deceased will open the path to the capital. The characters begin searching for a method to enter the capital of the dead. Realizing there are flowers on the ground, Hawk begins sniffing them when a sudden breeze wafts over all of the petals. When the characters open their eyes, they discover that they've arrived at the capital of the dead. Ban suddenly runs away, leading Meliodas and the rest to follow after him. Whilst attempting to follow, they're blown away by an explosive strike from Gila, but easily recover. He then suddenly encounters the Holy Knight Gila, who killed herself to enter the capital of the dead. The two then begin attacking the Holy Knight together before Gila provokes Meliodas to use his sword. In response, Meliodas draws his broken blade and utilizes full counter against Gila, who reveals that she knows the ability. Meliodas and Diane are still fighting Gila, but she's too strong, and Gila was about to use the power that she called Explosion, but she was stopped by Ban using his power, Snatch. But Gila used her explosion to stop Ban's ability. As the battle continues, the Sins are losing, but then King arrives and offers to help them. Gila uses her power once again to kill the Sins, but King blocks that attack and decides to fight her alone, which the other Sins agree to, and they sit down to watch the fight. Meliodas and the others watch as King defeats Gila with ease, but then she comes out of the rubble and is about to attack King, but Meliodas blocks the attack and sends her back to the living world. The Sins' bodies are starting to disappear and are about to go back to the living world as well. When they're back, they see that Gila was there, but still in a near-death state and not returned yet. Ban says that they should kill her, but Meliodas has an idea to do something with her. The Sins later leave the village to continue their journey. King asks Meliodas who Elizabeth is, but as always, he teases her, but then he tells him that she's the princess, which surprises King and decides to go to his fat form to show respect to Elizabeth, but Meliodas doesn't notice the difference but the clothes. Then King asks what happened to his sacred treasure, to which Meliodas replies that he sold it. The Vaizel Fight Festival Arc. Not long after, Meliodas questions King about the current status of the kingdom. King in response reveals that Gila was a mere low-rank apprentice the day before she fought them, and explains the mysterious new generation. The next day, near the town of Vaizel, Meliodas explains about the town hosting an annual flea market and about his speculations of a sacred treasure being sold there. Meliodas, Ban, King, and Hawk head toward the town, and there are directed by an alcoholic elderly man to the fight festival, whose rewards include Gideon, Diane's sacred treasure. Sometime later, after a brief skirmish with Taizu, Meliodas, Ban, and the unwitting King, along with the other contestants, gather at the fighting ring for the preliminary round. During the preliminary round, Meliodas is among a handful of combatants who overwhelm the rest and later qualify for the main tournaments. Afterward, Meliodas is assigned to battle Ban in the first round. Ban had entered himself, Meliodas, and King into the tournament as Ban, Meliodas, and Old Fart, respectively. Hauser almost recognizes the two, but dismisses them as the Deadly Sins because of their obvious aliases due to his naivete. When the first battle between Matrona and Griamore begins, Meliodas, along with others, ponders whether the former is Elizabeth when she reveals her similar appearance to the princess. After Matrona wins, her hat falls down, revealing her facial similarities to Diane. She skips toward the three Sins, but is only greeted with Meliodas' question as to her identity, which angers her and prompts her to punch him and storm off. She then answers to King's questions, explaining how she and Elizabeth were shrunk. Diane merrily states that she wanted to surprise Meliodas and jumps on him, expressing her elation at being held by him. After King and Kane's battle, Meliodas and Ban ready themselves for their battle, which is the final one in the first round. As the battle begins, Meliodas compares the circumstances they're currently in to his and Ban's first meeting, and punches him. Regaining his balance, Ban exchanges several attacks with his opponent. One of Meliodas' punches sends Ban crashing into the ring, even breaking the Great Vaizel Rock. In the midst of the resulting debris, Meliodas, who now mysteriously has a strange black-colored mark on his forehead and with his eyes colored black, similar to how he was when Golgius had attacked him previously, crushes Ban's hand and proceeds to defeat him. After Diane's battle, Kane and Meliodas enter the ring for their battle. After a brief conversation on whether Kane entering the fight festival was a coincidence, Kane then asks Meliodas if he is Meliodas' son. and he's greatly surprised upon learning that his opponent is in fact Meliodas himself, initially disbelieving him. Cain, after accepting the fact, attacks Meliodas and jumps back, declaring that he can't forgive Meliodas, who betrayed the kingdom, its people, and its most important person. Meliodas then recognizes the symbol on Cain's shirt as Danafor's crest, questioning Meliodas as to why he destroyed the kingdom and killed its citizens and Liz. Meliodas, answering the series of questions, states that he had tried to protect Danafor but failed, and that his failure is a sin. Cain is delighted that the rumors about Meliodas' responsibility for the destruction of Danafor are false, and he's glad to be rid of the suspicions. As a result, he forfeits his match. Finally, for the final battle in the tournament between Meliodas and Diane, or Matrona, both fighters enter the ring. Diane suggests to end their battle soon since they've already won their target, which is Gideon. However, they're then interrupted by three women who cheer Meliodas in a very erotic manner. Diane, enraged at Meliodas' obviousness on this, punches him as their battle begins. Bon had paid these three women to cheer erotically for Meliodas to anger Diane and have her battle Meliodas seriously. Meliodas realizes Bon's scheme and exchanges a barrage of powerful attacks with Diane when she refuses to believe that she's misunderstood, with one of the attacks nearly pushing him out of the ring. In response, Meliodas stops fighting and declares his identity as a deadly sin, and also that the sins will be capturing Vaizel. Meliodas continues threatening the civilians to leave Vaizel in 1 minute, lest they be massacred. A few moments afterwards, gigantic and explosive flares rain down on Vaizel. As the assailants, Gila, Jericho, and another Holy Knight land, the citizens are intimidated by Bon into fleeing, which makes Elizabeth realize the motive of the Sin's actions. They had forced the civilians to leave so they wouldn't be involved in the battle against the Holy Knights. Meliodas, noting on the Holy Knight's strength, instructs King, Diane, and Bon to separate. Soon after, Gila finds Meliodas. He accepts to fight her, but she retorts, boasting her increased abilities, and then releases several flares which stop midway. When he jumps to destroy the flares, one of them suddenly explodes, which triggers multiple other explosions. After the gigantic inferno settles, Meliodas, heavily injured, falls from a great height. After Jericho also defeats Bon, King confronts the two Holy Knights and defeats them with great ease. He then hands Elizabeth and Hawk the responsibility of watching over the two defeated Sins. Hiding behind a building, Veronica and Griamore find her and Hawk. Veronica notices the pendant on Meliodas' neck and then grabs Elizabeth's hand, trying to bring Elizabeth back to the capital of Leonis. As Elizabeth tries to resist, Meliodas regains consciousness and stops Veronica, trying to convince her that he'll protect Elizabeth. Angered further, Veronica triggers the Goddess Amber, the stone on her pendant that affects demonic beings. The stone shines brightly for a moment, and Meliodas then disappears. Annoyed at Elizabeth still refusing to return with her, Veronica finally orders Griamore to use force. Bon's attempt at opposing them are stopped by Jericho and Gila's arrival. While Veronica and Griamore are focused on Gila, Elizabeth manages to flee, with Veronica chasing behind. The princess's footsteps trigger one of the explosive mines Gila had set previously, leading to Veronica's death. Gila then reveals Hendrickson's goal, the resurrection of the Demon Clan, and tries to bring Elizabeth back with her. As the princess pleads for Meliodas to rescue her, the Goddess Amber darkens and shatters, releasing a black substance which collects and fuses with Meliodas, the right portion of whose body is completely colored black from forehead to knee, with spiral-like designs. Noticing Gila holding his broken sword, Meliodas grabs Gila's hand before she's able to notice. He holds her hand, which is in turn holding his sword. As Gila screams in pain, Meliodas returns her amputated hand and lightly swings his sword to deliver a blow which knocks both Gila and Jericho away. Losing consciousness, he ends up slicing Bon in half, as well as completely destroying the nearby terrain. He notices a worried Elizabeth and begins inspecting her through smell, causing her to gradually become confused. Acknowledging that she's not an enemy, Meliodas manipulates that black substance around his body to form a wing around his right arm, then heading off towards where King and Halbram were located. He interrupts the battle, knocking King away as he lands, and subsequently begins attacking Halbram. Despite being told that Halbram possesses the powers of 20 more Holy Knights, Meliodas adjusts his posture and launches towards him, delivering consecutive bashes with the large claws. The 20 Holy Knights supporting Halbram via the ability Link are astonished that he's been overpowered, realizing that Meliodas' powers may still be increasing. Suddenly, Hendrickson appears before the gathering of the Knights, lending Halbram a fraction of his powers, which consequently sends the rampaging Meliodas crashing into the wall with a single blow. While knocked out, Meliodas was then saved by Diane with her sacred treasure Gideon and ends up defeating Halbram, but as well destroying Vaizel. When Meliodas wakes up, Diane cuddles him in happiness. Later, Elizabeth runs happily to the saved Meliodas, but Meliodas was then punched by Bon due to being cut in half. Meliodas was then told by Bon of his Sword of Fate, which surprised Elizabeth and King of the missing sword. But Meliodas stated it was stolen and acting carefree, which surprised Hawke. Elizabeth then told Meliodas that the sword was something important to him and asks if it was really fine, to which Meliodas stated, "It is not fine, and it is a dire situation," which surprised Elizabeth, but then Meliodas stated that if Elizabeth is alright, then losing the sword isn't a big deal, which makes Elizabeth blush heavily, and makes Deanne upset because he wasn't worrying over her, but Meliodas is like, "You're always fine, why would I worry about you?" Meliodas and the rest treat each other's wounds and head to their next location to find either another deadly sin, or the sacred treasure. The Armor Giant Arc. As everyone was doing their own business, Meliodas was sitting next to a lake while resting from the Vaizel event. Meliodas realizes that the Holy Knights are gaining so much power so quickly, and that he shouldn't hold back anymore. Meliodas then picks up a stick and swings it towards a mountain, which is sliced in half to illustrate to us that he was in fact holding back. Meliodas then speaks of a prophecy that was mentioned by Dr. Dana and his daughter that said it was time to end the conflict foretold in it. Meliodas then mentions that he'll stop this 3,000-year war. The group was later informed by a villager that a group of holy knights and regular knights are doing a manhunt in the mountains for an evil criminal. The Deadly Sins then hear from a barely surviving knight that an armor giant was at the mountain and beat them all with ease. Meliodas then realizes it's Gowther. Meliodas and the rest later head out to Orden Forest to find Gowther, during which they talk about how dangerous the Dawn Roar are. Bon asks Meliodas if he's okay fighting without his weapon, to which Meliodas asks the same to Bon. The Deadly Sins then stop to see Gowther as he was facing against the Dawn Roar. Meliodas and the rest notice that Gowther and the knights aren't moving and realize that they're in a standoff, waiting for the other to attack first. Meliodas manages to stop the Dawn Roar attack on Gowther, however Slater rushes toward Meliodas and pins him down. Slater leaves Meliodas and attacks Gowther. Meliodas of course tries to stop him, but Simon gets in the way. As Weinheit was about to shoot Gowther with a powerful arrow, it's stopped by the injured boy Armando, who then reveals himself to be Gowther to the Deadly Sin's shock. After Gowther makes the Dawn Roar leave the battlefield by offering the armor giant's head, Gowther reveals to the Deadly Sins that the armor has a beast in it which was once a holy knight. The beast was then about to smash Meliodas and Bon, but the latter dodges in time and sends out several attacks against the beast's head. But the beast was not affected and sent them flying. King saves them with his Chastafal Form 2 Guardian, which he sent out to fight the beast but was defeated easily with Ice Breath. Meliodas and Bon decide to use a random weapon they find on the ground, and Meliodas charges toward the beast with a sword and shield. The beast destroys the shield with its despair venom, but Meliodas uses a sword where he summons a black flame known as Enchantment, which is the same flame he used on Bon to make his scar. When Meliodas is about to use a finishing move, he hears the beast's voice and realizes that it's still alive. Meliodas was then caught by the beast with its tongue, but Gowther then came and saved Meliodas with a strange light arrow, where Bon uses a wipe to grab Meliodas away from the beast. Bon then scolds Meliodas for not killing the beast, but Meliodas explains that the beast is still alive. But Bon tells him to stop being naive. Gowther then uses one of his powers, Invasion, to trap the beast into an illusion that his heart most desires to see. Meliodas realizes that the beast they're fighting is actually Dale, who was the father of Gila and a friend to them in the past. Meliodas tries to snap Dale out of this demon thing, but Bon pushes him away when Dale tries to attack him and gets slashed for the effort. King tells Meliodas he'll fight fire with fire and attacks Dale's with raining daggers, but it has no effect on Dale, other than Dale spitting out venom, which affects King greatly. Bon gets up and punches Meliodas and tells him he should stop being naive and that he should fight back unless he wants to lose his comrades. Meliodas then hears Elizabeth coming towards them, and the latter tosses a sword, which is a sword that Meliodas got from his former lover. Also, Elizabeth. Keep track. Elizabeth then tells him that Liz does not want him to keep on fighting, but to keep on living, and told him that she'll share his sins, whatever they are. Meliodas takes Elizabeth's word and catches Liz's sword and cuts Dale into many pieces with ease while apologizing for slaying him. Meliodas then apologizes to everyone for being naive, but of course they forgive him. Meliodas and King wonder if Dale has been cursed or if he's had a spell put on him, and wonder if this was the Holy Knights' plan to resurrect the Demon Clan, and Meliodas tells everyone that the new enemy is not just the Holy Knights. Meliodas wants to thank Elizabeth for giving him Liz's sword, but feels like something is released from him. Meliodas introduces Elizabeth and Deanne to Gowther, who celebrate. Meliodas then offers Cain to have a drink with him before he departs. Rejecting the suggestion, he questions Meliodas on whether he's projecting Liz onto Elizabeth, with the latter not replying. Meliodas goes to chat with Gowther while talking about how none of them are the same race, and Meliodas proceeds to ask Gowther about what happened during the ambush 10 years ago, to which he replies saying that it was Merlin who attacked and rendered him unconscious. Meliodas is shocked to find the traitor and asks Gowther if he knows where Merlin is, to which Gowther doesn't know. The Kingdom Infiltration Arc. While traveling on the road, Meliodas' group asks him who the next deadly sin to find is. Meliodas replies that they're going to the kingdom of Leonis to get his broken sword back, but the deadly sins push back on this because they say it was Meliodas' fault for losing it. Meliodas reveals to his group that the dragon handle is really one of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness, and that the goddess, fairy, giant, and human clans worked together to seal off the demon clan in the ancient past. Deanne wonders if the demons have been released yet, but Meliodas reveals that there are more pieces to the Eternal Darkness, since the seal is incredibly strong and there would have to have been a sign. Hawk asks why the Holy Knights are after Elizabeth as well, until a mysterious Holy Knight appears and reveals that Elizabeth is the last key needed to revive the Demon Clan. As Meliodas tries to reach Elizabeth, the mysterious Holy Knight just teleports herself and Elizabeth to Meliodas' anger. Meliodas takes Liz's sword and rushes out and orders Deanne to toss him toward Leonis since it's only 40 miles away. Bon grabs a hold of Meliodas as he wants to head to the kingdom as well, and Gowther appears along with them, revealing that he wanted to see Meliodas and Bon's friendship. Deanne grabs hold of the deadly sins and she tells Meliodas to bring back Elizabeth and tosses them toward Leonis at full speed. Meliodas, Bon, and Gowther land in Leonis while running towards the kingdom. Holy Knights are aware of their arrival and send out some troops to stop them. Meliodas tells Gowther and Bon that their mission is to save Elizabeth and to keep the fighting to a minimum. As the Holy Knights use several abilities simultaneously, Meliodas gets out Liz's sword and uses full counter, which defeats and massacres a bunch of them with ease. Then, a Holy Knight brute with heavy melee gauntlets ends up in their way trying to face them when Meliodas immediately knocks him out with a powerful punch and continues. The deadly sins then stop when they feel a large power coming from the south of the kingdom, which turns out to be Camelot's army with their leader, Arthur. Later, the trio continue to cut through the Holy Knights as they attempt to break through. Deciding to end this with minimal bloodshed, Gowther uses his sacred treasure Herod to overwrite the memories of the attacking Holy Knights and turn them into allies. Gowther explains this technique to the bewildered Meliodas and Bon, who then tells him not to use that on them no matter what, to which Gowther complies. The trio sneaks away from the Holy Knights and goes into hiding to find a plan. Bon tells Meliodas that they should head to Leonis Castle because in a fairy tale, the princess always gets locked in an underground prison. Meliodas agrees to that plan and heads out to the castle. The trio then senses a battle going on by the south gate, which Meliodas decides to head over to, thinking that Elizabeth might be there. When Dreyfus announces the Sin's presence to the citizens, Meliodas keeps running while Bon calls the Great Holy Knight a bastard. As Dreyfus was under Gowther's Nightmare Teller, a past version of Meliodas appears having a meal after training with his fellow Sins. He comments on his superior skills and calls Eritras invincible, only for the younger version of Henriksen to claim that Meliodas is being modest. He then compliments Dreyfus' sword skill and tells him that he lacks the skill and ambition to surpass his brother while munching on a handful of mini hawks. Meliodas disappears after telling Dreyfus that it's already too late and asks the skewered corpse of Zaratras if he's right, thus beginning the nightmare on the Great Holy Knight. Meliodas and Bon stop in their tracks when they see giant roots attacking a small town where Deanne, Gowther, and King are located. Bon asks Meliodas if he could sense it, which Meliodas nods as he mentions that Deanne and Gowther's powers are fading, but King's ability is raised to an invincible level. Meliodas later saves Arthur's life when Hendrickson uses Hellblaze on the King of Camelot, and Meliodas uses full counter to reflect the attack back at Henriksen, much to his shock. And Meliodas says that Hendrickson learned a very dangerous ability while he was gone, and told him that he's gonna get Elizabeth back. As Meliodas steps forward and faces Hendrickson, he asks him about the location of Elizabeth, but Hendrickson refuses to tell him. Meliodas immediately tries to kick him in the face, but Hendrickson was able to block. Meliodas follows with quick slash attacks, but his opponent is able to dodge them with ease. Moments later, Gilthunder comes down from a thundercloud attacking Meliodas, who's able to parry his attack. Both exchange multiple attacks and both blocking each one of them, but eventually Gilthunder was able to kick Meliodas in the chest and send him back where he's caught by Arthur. Meliodas thanks him and asks him if he can give him a hand in the fight. He also asks for his name, and as Arthur complies, he also mentions that he's heard of him and knows him, and then they both prepare to face Gilthunder and Hendrickson together. Meliodas ends up fighting against Gilthunder while Arthur's amazed at his skills despite him not really fighting seriously, and he still ends up fighting against Hendrickson. Gilthunder then uses a large lightning attack on Meliodas, but using the unknown dark power, Meliodas with just his fingers is able to stop Gilthunder's attack easily. Once Meliodas stops Gilthunder's attack, he regains his sword and goes on with the fight without the black mark. Meliodas and Gilthunder's battle rages on and shows that both of them are an equal match. Gilthunder sends Meliodas flying into a building, but Meliodas stops the crash by putting his feet inside the building. Meliodas asks Gilthunder if he really wants to have a death match with him. Gilthunder responds by using Meliodas' old creed of the Way of the Knight. But Gilthunder now believes that the Deadly Sins have turned down that creed and betrayed the kingdom. Gilthunder claims that he's stronger than any Deadly Sin, but Meliodas just nods and continues their fight with full speed. Meliodas tries to strike Gilthunder, but Hendrickson appears and tries to strike Meliodas, but he dodges just in time. Meliodas is surprised to see Hendrickson until he realizes that Arthur was defeated. Meliodas ends up facing against Hendrickson, Gilthunder, and Vivian. Vivian is the Holy Knight's name, I didn't mention that. Her name is Vivian. Meliodas begins to be overwhelmed by the Holy Knight trio, however, it's revealed by Hendrickson that Meliodas' power is increasing instead of decreasing, and the reason for Meliodas not fighting back against the trio is because Meliodas is heightening himself to his utmost power and is trying to unleash one decisive attack. The Holy Knights use all of their power together to finish off Meliodas before he can unleash his attack, as Meliodas summons his attack, Divine Slayer. However, Margaret comes running towards the battlefield to stop Gilthunder from hurting his hero, Meliodas. However, Meliodas spots something close to Margaret and uses his Divine Slayer to kill an invisible creature like a demon that was standing next to her. As Meliodas grins in satisfaction from destroying the creature, the masked Holy Knight attacks and hits Meliodas, heavily injuring him. Hendrickson rushes to Meliodas to finish him off. Gilthunder reappears and cuts off Hendrickson's arm. Gilthunder smiles and thanks Meliodas for setting him free from the spell as Meliodas smiles. As Gilthunder cuts off Hendrickson's arm, Hendrickson yells out in anger for betraying him. However, Gilthunder pointed out that he was never on his side to begin with. As Hendrickson tries to summon Hellblaze with his left arm, Gilthunder stops Hendrickson and sends him flying. Gilthunder proceeds on defeating Hendrickson, and afterward he, Margaret, and Meliodas meet up with the other Deadly Sins. Meliodas and the others are suddenly teleported to a forest by Vivian, but fortunately they're sent back to Leonis by Arthur's mysterious cloaked friend. Meliodas quickly realizes that the cloaked figure must be Merlin of the 7 Deadly Sins, at which she reveals herself to the group. Everyone is either shocked or happy to see Merlin. Meliodas, however, is displeased as he believes Merlin was the one who knocked him out 10 years ago and wanted answers from her, but decided to ask her later as they needed to save Elizabeth and Bartra, to which Merlin happily agreed and teleported the group to the royal chamber. The group was shocked to be at the location so quickly and noticed that the Dawn Roar were there as well. As Meliodas was about to destroy the door, Merlin revealed that it would be impossible to break as it was protected by Perfect Cube as it came from the demon world, and it would not be destroyed with either strong or weak attacks. Merlin used Absolute Cancel and breaks the spell, freeing Elizabeth and Bartra. Elizabeth quickly embraces Meliodas as she'd missed him, to which the latter comforted her by touching her chest, which annoyed Bartra. Meliodas points out that they had defeated Hendrickson and freed the king, and asked Dreyfus what he would do next. As Dreyfus admitted defeat and cried after learning Griamore is alive, Meliodas happily declares that everything was fixed. After the situation, Bartra starts to cough blood, which alarms everyone until Merlin comes out and offers to heal him back in Camelot along with Arthur. As Merlin was about to leave through the teleport, Arthur told her to wait as he went to Meliodas and offers him the title and rank of Great Holy Knight in Camelot, as he believed they were fated to meet. Everyone is shocked and surprised at Arthur's offer, but Meliodas accepts, much to Elizabeth's dismay, as Meliodas believes that since the kingdom is saved, Elizabeth is freed, and Dawn Roar will take over the Deadly Sin's job, that there'd be no need of him in Leonis. Arthur is overjoyed at Meliodas' acceptance, but Meliodas tells him not yet, as he needs to be in the kingdom to restore it, and he still has the Boar Hat to run. Meliodas then asks Merlin if she'll rejoin the Deadly Sins, who said not right away and teleports along with the sick Bartra and the depressed Arthur. Elizabeth comes back and asks Meliodas if he was really planning on leaving her someday, but before he can answer, the castle is cut in half, making everyone fall down. As everyone saves each other, they witness that the new generation is turning into hybrid demons, including Jericho and Gila. As Jericho and all the rest of the new generation knights transform into demons, Gother and Deanne appear and stop Jericho from rampaging. Gother uses invasion on Jericho and Gila to keep them calm. King, seeing the situation, is about to kill Jericho to save Deanne as she has little strength left. However, Meliodas stops King for a moment and tells him it's strange how all of the new generation knights are suddenly becoming demons, and he realizes that someone has to have activated them. Hendrickson comes face to face with the Deadly Sins and the Holy Knights, explaining that it was him that did all this and he was after Elizabeth. Hendrickson offers to spare Meliodas and the others if Elizabeth comes with him, as he doesn't want to kill one of his kind, but the group refuses to hand Elizabeth over to him, and King ambushes him until he's attacked by Helbrim, who was revived thanks to Hendrickson's forbidden technique. Meliodas and Gilthunder are furious at Hendrickson's cruel nature and attack him until they realize that Vivian took Margaret and Elizabeth hostage. Hendrickson then stabs both Meliodas and Gilthunder to the three girls' shock, as Vivian thought that she was going to be with Gilthunder forever. However, Hendrickson explains that Gilthunder will never leave her as a revived corpse to her shock. Meanwhile, Elizabeth decides to go along with Hendrickson to save Meliodas, also to everyone else's shock. Hendrickson accepts her offer and was only planning to spare Meliodas, but he'll spare Gilthunder as a bonus. As Hendrickson summons a black matter wing, Elizabeth tells Meliodas to think about their promise and was taken by Hendrickson to an unknown location to Meliodas' dismay. When Bon and Hawk appear to them, Meliodas and Hawk agree to go rescue Elizabeth and ask Bon to help. However, Bon starts to attack Meliodas to the latter's shock as Bon rips Meliodas' arm off. During the battle, Meliodas fights Bon, but he wasn't at his full power due to the acid effect, and he used demon power to reattach his arm. As Bon witnesses Meliodas' ability, Bon asks Meliodas if he's part of the demon clan, to which Meliodas doesn't respond, and Bon takes that as a yes. As they battle, Meliodas is put against the wall, and Bon reveals that the Goddess clan promises him to revive Elaine if he killed Meliodas. Meliodas understood Bon, as he always hears him sleep talk about Elaine, and decides to accept death for Bon. Bon was surprised at this sudden event, but decided to do as Meliodas wishes, saying he'll never forget about Meliodas and told Elaine to wait a little bit longer. As he was about to kill Meliodas, the latter jumps up and headbutts him in the face, which makes him bleed. Bon grows furious at Meliodas' action, asking why he would accept Bon's offer but attack him. Meliodas tells Bon that he did say he was okay with Bon killing him, but he didn't say that he wouldn't fight back. Meliodas then tells Bon that Elizabeth thinks nothing of sacrificing herself and for their promise to save Leonis. Knowing that, he can't die right now. Meliodas tells Bon that despite what he's doing, Bon will be his friend no matter what, but like him, he's got things that he can't give up on. Hawk then confronts Bon, asking if he was ever Meliodas' friend. Bon tells Hawk that, yeah, Meliodas is his greatest friend, but that's not going to stop him from trying to bring Elaine back. Upset at this, Hawk asks what if Elaine doesn't come back? He'll lose his friend, and even if it was true, Elaine might not be happy about how she came back. Bon asks Hawk what should he do, as when Elaine died he was depressed, but when he met the other deadly sins he kept himself distracted, but he still knows that he's going to be alone forever, be it in this world or the next, saying that this world without her is like hell. Hawk doesn't understand Bon's reasoning, but Meliodas says he understands, though they should probably put their fight on hold until they solve the current matter as the deadly sins. Bon agrees, they'll put a pin in this, it's fine, whatever. Meliodas then orders Hawk to carry him to Elizabeth's location, Merlin's old castle, while he sleeps on Hawk to regain his strength. Hawk and Meliodas later arrive at Merlin's old castle, where Meliodas is shocked to spot the bleeding Elizabeth and the deceased Dreyfus, while Hendrickson knew that acid wouldn't work on Meliodas because of their detestable power. Hendrickson goes on to say that he's a druid, who are sorcerers deep in the forest. Druids are also known to revere goddesses and nature and shun the abominable demons. Hendrickson explains that when he first met Meliodas, he felt malevolent, massive powers coming from within him, which was a power greater than Zaratras himself, and he couldn't get a single read on his thoughts, which made Hendrickson view Meliodas with fear, intrigue, and a little bit of admiration. However, Hendrickson admits that he now possesses the same power as Meliodas. And yet somehow, despite talking directly to Meliodas, he doesn't notice Meliodas just grabbing Elizabeth and, dodging his gaze several times before just handing her over to Hawk. So Meliodas tells Hawk to take her somewhere safe and tells Elizabeth that they can both run the tavern when they both get out of this alive. As Hawk runs away with the princess, Hendrickson's about to use Hellblaze on them until Meliodas appears and slices off his arm once more. As Meliodas overpowers Hendrickson, the latter somehow gets control of his severed arm and still uses Hellblaze on the runaways until Deanne appears to save them and crush his severed arm. Hendrickson is shocked to see Deanne as well, and not in near death like he left her. King then appears behind him and smashes him and also the mountain that they're standing on. Hendrickson rises up to see the 7 deadly sins, actually the 5 deadly sins at this point, Meliodas, Bon, Deanne, King, and Gother, and challenges them to a final battle. As Hendrickson taunts the deadly sins for being outnumbered due to the new generation transforming into demons, Meliodas points out that he might want to run those numbers again. Hendrickson senses that all of the new generations were stopped as they returned to normal due to Bon and King's help, while the other Holy Knights are currently surrounding the ruined castle. Hendrickson, however, is joyful to admit that the situation has become a lot more interesting, and wonders how the deadly sins defeated the new generation so fast, but admits the sins can't defeat him. As the battle goes on with the Deadly Sins working together to fight against Hendrickson, he admits that he's invincible due to his demonic power, but when he smashes Bon into the wall where he finds the demon corpse and returns it to Hendrickson, smashing against the wall furiously for having the demon while questioning him for having it. The wall breaks down to reveal the demon, which shocks the Deadly Sins. Hendrickson explains that he found it in the Fairy King Forest long ago and what a great blessing it was to him. Hendrickson uses the power of the Red Demon and summons Wipe that nearly stabs the Deadly Sins, except for Bon, who uses this to get closer to Hendrickson and slam him into the ground while furious, telling him that he can't beat him since he was the one who killed the Red Demon. When Hendrickson is sent underground, Bon destroys the Red Demon in anger while they follow Hendrickson underground as they can still sense him and something greater. Leaving Deanne behind due to her size, the Deadly Sins travel inside to discover Hendrickson, who revealed that he has another demon underground that he discovered years ago, which was a large sunflower head demon known as the Grey Demon, which is much higher than the Red Demon. Hendrickson took a blood sample from the Grey Demon's corpse and injected it into himself, resulting in him gaining a tremendous power boost from the demon. Bon still attacks Hendrickson despite the warning Meliodas gives him, and Bon ends up getting sliced in half for the effort. Meliodas, along with the other Deadly Sins, are blown out of Merlin's old castle and badly injured due to Hendrickson's newfound power. During Hendrickson's assault on the Holy Knights and the Deadly Sins, Meliodas protects Elizabeth from all of the attacks, but collapses when he's no longer able to handle it. Meliodas pleads Elizabeth to escape. She refuses, leading Hendrickson to unleash Dead End. When all hope is seemingly lost, Hawk suddenly appears to save the paralyzed Meliodas. Meliodas pleads for Hawk to escape, but Hawk takes the attack, killing him in the process. Meliodas grows furious at his friend's death, but not as much as Elizabeth, which unlocks her hidden powers and reveals her right eye with a strange symbol. When Elizabeth heals everyone, Meliodas is unsure about Hawk, as he knows that Elizabeth's ability can't heal those who have been killed, which brings Elizabeth to tears. When Hendrickson's about to kill Gilthunder, Meliodas charges towards Hendrickson, kicks him in the face, and punches him in the stomach, which makes him collapse on the floor, while Meliodas tells everyone to not lose hope while in his Black Mark mode once more. Not that that's a huge help, as everyone seems to lose hope anyway. Meliodas then orders Gowther to use broadcast to explain his plan to everyone, which shocks them, but they go along with it. Meliodas ends up fighting Hendrickson head-on while the Holy Knights launch their attacks on both of them. Hendrickson remains unaffected while Meliodas starts taking damage. During the battle, Hendrickson realizes Meliodas can't use full counter because his power wasn't healed, only his physical strength. Despite Hendrickson trying to put Meliodas down, saying it's futile to continue fighting him, as Meliodas can't use full counter and was about to use Dark Nebula on Meliodas, Meliodas continues to push on as the latter steps inside the Dark Nebula and punches Hendrickson, destroying the attack. Everyone continues to assault Meliodas with all of their powers at the same time, while Elizabeth pleads for everyone to stop it, despite it being Meliodas' plan to begin with. After Bon attacks Meliodas, Hendrickson feels an incredibly high power coming from within Meliodas, which shocks even him. Gowther reveals that this was Meliodas' ultimate attack, as he doubles everyone's attack power that he took and was about to unleash it on Hendrickson. Gowther also reveals that surviving this technique is 0.2%, which shocks and scares Hendrickson into flying away, and also seems unnecessarily specific. But he's trapped in Wall by Griamore, and Meliodas jumps up toward Hendrickson. Hendrickson asks why Meliodas is doing this for the people who framed and attacked him, but Meliodas' response is that Hendrickson committed a sin for abandoning his friends to protect his powers and unleashes Revenge Counter, killing and destroying Hendrickson's body. Meliodas later falls back down to Earth from his battle against Hendrickson as Elizabeth comes rushing to his side. As the two get closer, Bartra coughs and tells them to be kept separated as he returns from Camelot after being healed by Merlin. Meliodas and Elizabeth greet the two, and Bartra forgives the Holy Knights for their crime and clears the Deadly Sin's name. Elizabeth, however, is still depressed as Hawk is still, dead from protecting Meliodas. While Bon grieves over Hawk's dead body, Meliodas comes closer to Hawk, telling him that if he makes it out alive, he'll give him triple the amount of leftovers that he can eat. For some unknown reason, the black matter on Hawk's body starts to fade, revealing that Hawk has indeed been revived, but shrunk into a smaller size. But this still brings a lot of joy to the Deadly Sins, especially Bon. Meliodas then embraces the princess, ending their adventure in Leonis. Post-Kingdom Infiltration Arc. As Leonis is being rebuilt due to the battle, Meliodas and Merlin then discuss the issue regarding the location of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness, as it was no longer in Leonis. When Merlin used her location spell, it was revealed that a strange bird appeared and fled to the east. She then says that she told Arthur that she would be away for a while, as she'll rejoin the Deadly Sins for the time being. This makes Meliodas glad as she could help them, but he still feels uneasy by her suspicious smile. He states that he still wanted to know what happened 10 years ago, but Merlin seems to be more interested in Hawk, calling him a hero, which makes the tiny pig very happy and befriends her. Meliodas takes Hawk back to the Boar Hat as Bond feeds Hawk with expired food. Gilthunder appears in casual wear, wanting to have a talk with Meliodas. The two sit down and enjoy some Burnia ale, being commented by Gilthunder as having a good taste, despite the fact that he called it only slightly better than a horse's urine before. Gilthunder states that he's going to relinquish his position as a holy knight and become a wanderer. It was to clear his mind from his sin that he committed as a holy knight, despite him working undercover and trying to protect Margaret. Meliodas decides to not put any pressure on Gilthunder to give up on his plans, because he's already a man and that his decision should be respected. However, he wonders how would Margaret take it. The Sins end up celebrating the festival while working in the Boar Hat. Bond decides to tell Meliodas that he's not just leaving the Boar Hat, but withdrawing from the 7 deadly sins, much to Meliodas' surprise. The next day, when Bartra's about to award the Sins and Hawk for their efforts in restoring the freedom of Leonis, Meliodas notices that Hawk has regrown back to normal size, and that many holy knights were whispering behind Meliodas' back. When Bartra was about to give the award, Meliodas yells an objection to everyone's surprise. When Bartra questions him for the reason behind his objection, he explains that he couldn't possibly accept the award while everyone was whispering behind their backs, and demands to know who they were. A group of holy knights, Doggetto, Wallio, and Deathpierce, the Pleiades of the Azure Sky who served under the great holy knight Denzel, came to Leonis to question the Sins regarding the defeat of Hendrickson, claiming that they weren't strong enough to beat him and demanding to see how strong Meliodas truly is. Bartra allows the fight to go on as Meliodas fights against Doggetto, who's proven to be a powerful holy knight, but Meliodas easily dodges his attack and strikes him. Doggetto insults the holy knights and the great holy knights for being weak, as he believed that being a true holy knight is to wield great power, but Meliodas disagrees and believes that it was the heart that makes a holy knight, and easily defeated Doggetto by breaking his fingers and landing a punch on him. As Meliodas challenges the other members of the Azure Sky, Deathpierce rejects his challenge as the holy knights realize now how strong Meliodas was. They end up apologizing for their rude behavior. Doggetto's upset as his friend has died during the battle against Hendrickson. Meliodas and the others go to Bartra's throne room where Bartra thanks them for their services, but he has a grim expression. He states that the Holy War would still be approaching, but he has a new view into the future, as he saw 3 heroes fighting against a mountain giant in Camelot. As the group discusses Bartra's warning, they sense a large earthquake that was coming from the east. Meliodas knows the origin of the power and was in a state of shock and anger. The next day, Elizabeth runs towards the Boar Hat wearing a new waitress outfit. She asks Meliodas if she could work in the Boar Hat since the Sins were going to Camelot on a mission by Bartra's orders. However, Meliodas refuses to take her in as her father would be mad for letting her work as a waitress, but she told him that she doesn't care and wants to run the bar together with Meliodas as they promised. He states that he didn't make a promise to her, and since they saved the kingdom, there's no need for Elizabeth to work. When she questions Meliodas for being so aloof towards her, he starts to harass her the usual way to prove that he's not being aloof until Hawk comes in and ties Meliodas up. When Meliodas goes to Merlin's house, he comes across Gother, telling him to get ready for the mission in Camelot. The Sin of Lust, though, refuses to Meliodas' surprise and goes on his date with Gila. Meliodas doesn't understand as he's never seen the two of them together. Albion Arc. When everyone exits Merlin's home, Meliodas enters demanding to know what happened 10 years ago and wants something that was stolen from him. Merlin reveals that she knows that the demon clan was set free and believes Hendrickson is still alive. Meliodas is not stirred by the belief that Hendrickson is still alive, though. What worries him the most, though, are the ones who were set free, as he believes that they were the 10 Commandments, who were handpicked by the Demon King himself. Merlin gets a bit exhausted as the items in her room fly around. Suddenly, Merlin and Meliodas are struck by Gother's blackout technique that knocks out everyone in the capital, except for Diane, who is believed to be affected as well. But later on, they're revealed to be alright as they searched around the city to find the cause of the anomaly. There they find Elizabeth regaining consciousness, and then the aftermath of the skirmish between Diane and Gother appearing to have ended in a draw. After the short scuffle has been settled now, with Gother returning Gila's old memories, as well as Zeal including the breakup of their relationship, Meliodas and the others return to the bar where Slater agrees to join them for a while, and Elizabeth wants to join, but Meliodas shuts her down coldly to avoid her getting hurt by the 10 Commandments, to the displeasure of others. However, Merlin gets a call from Arthur, who is under attack from an Albion and is teleported to Camelot to battle the giant. As the Knights of Camelot battle the demon's giant golem Albion, Meliodas and others aid them while fighting the beast. While Meliodas leads Arthur and his men on the giant arm, Meliodas' sword, Liz's sword is destroyed during the battle. While Merlin still refuses to return what she stole from him, she's willing to return his sacred treasure, Lostvayne, which he uses to split himself into several copies and easily destroy the golem with full counter. While some part of the kingdom is destroyed, Arthur thanks Meliodas and the others for their help, while Elizabeth feels sorry for Meliodas having his sword broken, as it was a great treasure to him. But Meliodas reveals that he's fine with it and felt that both Liz and Elizabeth had been looking out for him for a long time. While the group chats fondly, Galland of the Ten Commandments appears and challenges everyone to a fight. Meliodas is shocked to see him, as Galland reveals that he knows Meliodas and was surprised that he hadn't aged in the last 3,000 years, but he still attacks him. While the Deadly Sins fight bravely and Meliodas even uses his demonic power, they still lose, and are believed to be killed by Galland, which is revealed to be Invasion by Gowther. Istar Arc. Meliodas later has a nightmare where he loses Liz again and wakes up facing Elizabeth, who's in tears from worrying about him. Elizabeth then takes Meliodas to where the others are healing, and they're all sad about losing to Galland. However, Meliodas soon lifts everyone's spirits, stating that they have to train more to get stronger, and as a strategy, Arthur and Elizabeth would have to awake their hidden powers as well. Meliodas believes that the situation was so bad they have to bring in Escanor. Later he checks up on Deanne's health with King. It's revealed then that she seems to have lost all of her memories up to the point of meeting Meliodas for the first time. While Meliodas and the others talk about Deanne's lost memories, King keeps Diane company until she starts to lose more memories and runs off. Gowther soon reveals that he used Lost World on her to test if her feelings for King were stronger than she said, provoking King to punch Gowther. The others follow Deanne, who is heading to Megadozer, until they're stopped by Monspeed's fireball, which Hawk Mama eats to the others' surprise. While they couldn't sense Deanne's power level anymore, Meliodas believes that she's fine and should focus on their training until they meet Deanne again. Meliodas decides the first thing to do is head to Istar, the home of the Druids and the location of Meliodas' strength. While the Boar Hat travels to Istar, Merlin reveals that the reason for her to steal Meliodas' power was that he couldn't control his emotions very well and nearly destroyed Leonis when a young girl got herself injured during the framing 10 years ago, possibly being Elizabeth. Merlin then somehow stole Meliodas' strength and gave it to the Druids for safekeeping. Once they travel there, they're greeted by the head of the Druids, Jenna and Zeneri, along with their bodyguard Theo. When they request them for training and Meliodas' strength, they agree to help out while Zeneri leads Meliodas and Elizabeth inside the castle to test them. Zeneri soon reveals to have feelings for Meliodas as she wants him to grope her and seems jealous of Elizabeth, while Meliodas shows no interest in her. Zeneri then tests Meliodas' strength by sending him through memory lane to the day Danafor was destroyed to see if he could control his emotion when Liz died. However, Meliodas repeated the day so many times he soon started to lose it until he was inspired by Elizabeth and tried it once more, passing the test to Zeneri's surprise. Meliodas soon goes to the training ground where the others are training and pairs off with King. However, once inside, King starts to fight him instead of the Amber that they were supposed to choose. King starts to question Meliodas' motivation and that if he was ever on their side, which Meliodas refuses to answer as he believes King wouldn't believe him anyway. After much battling, the two come to an agreement to work together while King keeps an eye on him. Once out of the training cave, Jenna gives back Meliodas' strength, which could be sensed by the Ten Commandments from afar. Meliodas soon requests Merlin to teleport them to the Ten Commandments location to greet them and pay back at Galland, which she did, but only for 10 seconds. Meliodas uses these 10 seconds to utterly defeat Galland and sends his greeting to Zeldris. Zeldris and Frodrin of course attempt to attack him, only for him to be teleported away before they connect. After returning and revealing to everyone that he made the commandments spread around the land, they soon scold Meliodas for making them angry and causing havoc. However, Meliodas soon reveals that he made them split up for them to be easier to take out than fighting them in a whole group, which calms everybody down. But King remains uneasy with Meliodas' decision. Meliodas checks on the others' group training, which Arthur's got his whole thing going on, and Griamore's a child again. Meliodas then sees Hawk's new form, which he was stunned at, but ignores him and soon asks Zeneri how Elizabeth is doing in her trials. Elizabeth returns to the group to see how their training's going. She also gets a new outfit for battle, as Zeneri believes it would be easier for her to move, and Meliodas of course enjoys the outfit and pokes Hauser's eye for ogling Elizabeth, hinting at a jealous side. Meliodas asks Elizabeth how her training is going. She responds that she failed to everyone's surprise. After everyone's training, the Deadly Sins decide to head out and stop the Ten Commandments and find Escanor. Before heading out, Meliodas cheers up Elizabeth for failing her trial by saying it's okay to fail, as he failed the trials 1,000 times and knows that Elizabeth has some crazy power hidden. This quickly cheers up Elizabeth, and she promises to be of help to them, and soon restores their relationship. While traveling, Meliodas asks how Gilthunder and Hauser's training was, and they notice that they got stronger to Gilthunder's joy. Meliodas soon gets around to ask Hawk what happened to him while training, which Hawk revealed that he got eaten by a tyrant dragon while being paired up with Oslo, but Hawk soon ate his way through the dragon's stomach and somehow gained its abilities, even though they're a weaker version of them. Hawk soon gets a read on Meliodas himself and is shocked to find out that Meliodas' power level increased to 32,500, and is stunned to find out that Escanor is far stronger than Meliodas. But Meliodas soon reveals that despite getting his power back, he needs to train along the way to get stronger, as he's become pretty rusty. Raven's Arc. After the activation of Melascula's magic, Meliodas and King discuss the latter's temporary departure from the Sins, to which the former asks if it were to look for Deanne. Before King's departure, he questions how all of the people there can be so loyal to Meliodas when he's clearly untrustworthy. Yet Meliodas remains calm and says nothing. Elizabeth attempts to persuade King to no avail. He leaves, and Meliodas tells him if something happens to give him a call. The sudden disappearance of Bond's power causes Meliodas to knock over a bottle of beer while cleaning the bar. He mutters Bond's name, unaware of the events taking place miles away. Great Fight Festival Arc. Meliodas knocks down a bunch of earth crawlers while meeting back with Arthur. When he cooks their meat, it tastes horrible, and he decides to save the scraps for Hawk. Later, Meliodas and Arthur meet with Bond, who immediately have an arm wrestling match, which Bond wins easily. Meliodas forgives Bond, who's still relatively depressed about having tried to kill him back at Leonis, and invites him to come along to search for Elizabeth and the others. After the duo makes amends with one another, Meliodas is able to sense that Elizabeth is on the other side of a large wall, with the two both noting that he would reach her soon. Bond and Meliodas both release respectively powerful attacks, resulting in the structure between himself and Elizabeth's group being destroyed, but an entire open path to the other contestants and the hosts themselves. After Gloxinia fatally wounds Escanor and quickly brings him back to optimal health, he has Droll split the group in teams of 2. Bond and Meliodas find themselves working together, though they wait in great suspense as both Elizabeth and Elaine begin their match. Once it's over, the two themselves have a cakewalk, defeating a pair of blue demons, all while debating over whose girlfriend is better and not even noticing that the fight was really started because they were too distracted by their own literal waifu war. Anyway, once King and Deanne's matches are over, it's now fallen upon Escanor and Hawk to fight Jericho and Gother. The latter's attempt to control Lion's Sin fails, as he ends up using Merlin as his own son and Rita's stored sunshine power to attack Droll and Gloxinia. Taking advantage of this, Meliodas quickly rushes to attack the injured commandments. After injuring Droll quite grievously, the demon resorts to taking hostages out of his comrades, though this is ineffective as the Sin of Wrath removes the remaining 2 arms he has left in response. Controlling the tide of the battle for the majority, slicing through Droll's body and arms as well as manhandling Gloxinia, the former Fairy King's armor breaks after landing a blow on Meliodas. It was likely the battle would have ended in his favor up until the rest of the 10 Commandments arrive on the scene. Once on the scene, he has a quick standoff against Zeldris before attacking his younger brother with Lostvayne, only to have his own arm cut off mid-swing. In retaliation, the Dragon's Sin kicks the commandment away in order to retrieve his detached arm, only to be stopped by his brother once again. After being put under a spell by Greyroad, he retrieves and attaches his arm once more after a brief exchange with Zeldris, smashing the ground to create a smokescreen and escape, only to be barred from doing this. After being attacked by Derrieri's combo star attack, his wrists are battered harshly, only to be praised for surviving and soon after attacked by Monspeed. Emerging from the flames and slicing through the former's throat to no avail, he finds himself without his mark and hopelessly outgunned. After pleading for Dreyfus to fight Fraudrin's control, the demon feigns as such only to attack Meliodas with Break. Gloxinia being equally brutal in attacking with Basquias, resulting in a large powerful explosion that leaves the captain looking exhausted and once again with his arm blown off. Appearing to be defeated and scolded by Zeldris, Meliodas activates Revenge Counter, having gathered enough strength to frighten the remaining commandments with the possibility of either death and/or defeat. However, this is quickly dispelled thanks to Estarosa's commandment, and Meliodas is left powerless. Estarosa then goes on to antagonize his brother for how he betrayed them, wishing to hear him suffer more while he continued stepping on him, Meliodas mouthing something though he seems to be unable to completely speak it. Then going in depth about how in the past, when Meliodas was the leader of the original 10 Commandments, he admired his strength and heartlessness, and that he could have become the Demon King. Melascula then steps up, desiring to eat Meliodas' soul for herself, wanting payback for what transpired with Escanor and Bond. The Immortal himself shows up soon after this, snapping the demon's neck, removing her hearts and destroying them, effectively killing her. Despite his intentions, Meliodas, though with a smile, reprimands Bond for jumping in so recklessly, with Bond remarking that idiots stick together. After being assisted to his feet, Bond is soon after thanked for killing Melascula, citing that he'd have done so himself had he not been trying to take his brother's very soul. though the distance between them is cleared quickly, having stabbed Meliodas in one of his hearts before either sin could react. Using an attack he calls Rebellion to summon 6 other swords, Estarossa explains that the upper echelons of the demon clan have 7 hearts, and once all of a demon's hearts are crushed, they die. Ban attempts to stop Estarossa, but he's ignored as Estarossa stabs one heart after another, finally killing Meliodas. Defensive Battle for Leonis arc. 1 month after Meliodas' death, instead of moving on to the capital of the dead, Meliodas is lingering in Purgatory. There he discusses his fate and his past self with the Demon King. The Demon King states that he will feed on Meliodas' emotions to regain his lost power and to return Meliodas to his former personality. Meliodas refuses and attacks. When Meliodas finally returns to the living world, he finds that the 10 Commandments have been wreaking even more havoc. He saves Elizabeth just as Darieri was about to kill her, punching a large hole in her abdomen. He then apologizes to a crying Elizabeth for taking so long to come back. Darieri interrupts them by striking Hawk Mama after chaining several combo star attacks. Hawk tries to intervene but is kicked by Darieri. This provokes Meliodas, who grabs Darieri by the neck and smashes her into the ground, resetting her combos in the process. Meliodas starts to get relentlessly attacked, however, he effortlessly deflects all hits. He knocks her down, resetting the combo again. Darieri continues attacking Meliodas in vain. Meliodas states a quote that describes how his old self would have approached his current situation. Monspeet intervenes in the fight to aid his partner, shooting his technique Kaijinryu at Meliodas. But before the attack reaches him, he kicks Darieri into the air and uses full counter after activating his demon mark. The attack is reflected towards Monspeet and Darieri as well, seemingly destroying them. After that, Meliodas joins the fight against Fraudrin. Fraudrin battles Meliodas, but even with his gigantification ability, the Sin overpowers him with ease. Merlin realizes that he's using a clone, stating that his power level is now 60,000, and after activating his demon mark, it's even higher. Fraudrin exclaims surprised how Meliodas' power is similar to how he was in the past. He tries to attack, but Meliodas swiftly attacks Fraudrin, piercing multiple holes in his body. Severely injured, Fraudrin shrinks to his normal size. He says that he and the other commandments have been waiting to take revenge against Meliodas and the goddesses. Meliodas pats Fraudrin's face, but then rudely pushes him to the side. Ban feels that there's something off about the captain. Meliodas remarks how Fraudrin is not an actual commandment, but rather a substitute. Fraudrin talks back, saying that Meliodas cast aside the pride of the demon clan. Fraudrin then decides to wipe out Leonis by immolating himself. Meliodas gets bored and tells him that he should just hurry up and die. It's Griamore, though, that stops Fraudrin from self-destruction. Fraudrin, moved, surrenders and tells Meliodas to kill him. Meliodas mercilessly kills him without a moment's thought. Ban walks towards the captain, telling him that he's glad his partner isn't dead and decides to have a toast later. Meliodas searches through the destroyed Boar Hat for food and beverages. Elizabeth finds Meliodas and eats with him. She states how Meliodas is a generous and gentle person. Meliodas tells Elizabeth how Ban was looking at him with an unrecognizable look. Then Meliodas starts to describe the giddy feeling he had when he killed Fraudrin. He starts to cry and admits that he's scared of turning into the way he used to be. He continues to say that he's not going to be able to save Elizabeth if he doesn't turn back to his old self. Elizabeth comforts Meliodas and declares that she'll never leave his side no matter what. Meliodas visits Merlin and Escanor where she's taking a bath. Ban asks where Meliodas was because they couldn't celebrate properly and then apologizing for not knowing what expression to make. Meliodas tells him that there's nothing to apologize for. Ban insults Meliodas' vacant look and he gets punched by Meliodas so that he would just shut up. Seems like everything's fine now. Corand arc. To celebrate the Boar Hat being rebuilt and the reunion of the 7 deadly sins, Meliodas and the Sins have a drinking party. Meliodas drinks a whole barrel of some unspecified alcohol while Deanne cheers him on. When Merlin arrives, Meliodas notices something wrong with Merlin. With all the Sins in the room, they toast to the reunion. Deanne asks Gowther how his creator ended the Holy War, and Meliodas and Merlin question that. However, Gowther couldn't give a response. Meanwhile, Elizabeth keeps thinking about how there was an Elizabeth with Meliodas 3,000 years ago and questions that. Meliodas comes out of nowhere and harasses Elizabeth, asking her why she was staring off into space. He lets Elizabeth know that she can ask him anything, which leads to Elizabeth telling him that she wants to talk later. After Elizabeth walks off, Merlin reestablishes the fact that Zeldris is still alive. Meliodas prioritizes freeing the people of Leonis and liberating Camelot first before fighting Zeldris. When Merlin walks off and enters a room, she almost collapses and is caught by the captain. Meliodas then asks if Zeldris did something to her, however, she tries to avoid answering it. He sets her on the bed and tells her that he knows she's trying to protect Arthur. Gasping and begging Meliodas, she asks him to help because he is her hope. A while after Merlin passes out, Meliodas and Elizabeth walk to a mountain for their talk. He asks Elizabeth if she recalls playing on the mountain with him when she was a kid, however, she doesn't really remember that time. She asks him if he thinks it's a coincidence that Liz passed away 16 years ago and she was born 16 years ago, and that they had the same name. Meliodas remarks how they're not really alike. She continues to say that during King and Deanne's training, they met another Elizabeth that looks just like her. Meliodas becomes surprised that they know that and starts getting worried. Elizabeth sort of freaks out, but Meliodas tries to put it off as exhaustion. Elizabeth also informs him how Derriere mistook her for someone else, and then she tells him that she's ready to accept what he has to say. To avoid giving a real answer, Meliodas tells her that it doesn't ring a bell. Elizabeth, saddened a little, tells him that she trusts him more than anyone else and leaves. Meliodas thinks about Elizabeth's words and says he's not ready. As soon as Elizabeth breaks the spell on Merlin, Meliodas bursts through the door and asks what happened. He was quite surprised that Elizabeth broke the spell. Noticing that Elizabeth was worn out, he offers a back rub, but Elizabeth says she's okay as she wants some alone time. She starts thinking about Meliodas as soon as she leaves. Continuing with the mission, Meliodas and the others head towards the city of Corand. During the trip to Corand, Bon asks Meliodas if he can sit out the mission, and Meliodas allows him to. He acknowledges that Bon is doing this because of Elaine. Bon tells him that she can't handle it anymore and that her death is inevitable, so staying with her is what he wants to do. Before Meliodas can finish sympathizing, Bon cuts him off to say, does he understand how it feels to let your lover die again? Meliodas looks away in a sad expression. Hawk busts through the door, exclaiming that there's something wrong. Meliodas enters the bar to see that Elizabeth is acting strange, and she informs him that there's a bit of a werefox situation. Meliodas becomes shocked, realizing that she's getting her memories back. After the goddess symbol appears in both of Elizabeth's eyes, she faints. Not knowing what's going on, Deanne questions if Zeldris' curse moved to Elizabeth. She's then corrected by Meliodas, who says that her memories of all of her previous incarnations are coming back. After Deanne informs King about Elizabeth's reincarnation, she's silenced by Merlin. She points out how the captain was being cynical to Elizabeth for ignoring her. Meliodas tells everyone that Elizabeth is going to die in 3 days. Everyone becomes appalled, and Deanne asks if he's joking. Meliodas makes up his mind and decides to tell everyone about his 3,000-year journey. Meliodas reveals that his curse is immortality, while Elizabeth's curse is perpetual reincarnation, bestowed by their parents after being killed by them. He also reveals that the only way to break their curses would be for one of them to give their power off to one of the ones who cast it, or someone with equivalent power, like Zeldris. When Deanne tearfully asks what'll happen if he breaks the curses, as the rest of the Sins are utterly shocked and sympathetic for the separated lovers, Meliodas sadly smiles, stating that they'll die for real this time and forever reunited in the afterlife as he had promised Elizabeth. He comforts Deanne and asks her and the rest of the Sins to remain focused on their mission. Which is kind of a big ask after that huge exposition drop, but whatever. After saving Perio and his village from demons as requested by Gother, the Sins arrive at the abandoned city stronghold of Corand. Someone's waiting for them, and they see it's Zeldris, causing Meliodas to rush in blind rage at his estranged brother, who tells him to wake up and stop being deceived by Elizabeth. Despite the others' protests, Meliodas follows through but ends up getting trapped in Melascula's dark cocoon, who created an illusion of Zeldris to lure Meliodas in and to keep him from protecting the others from her, and uses an altered version of her vengeful return to reanimate the deceased victims of Corand who were slain 500 years ago, despite being only skeletons. So, in short, skeleton army. They quickly deal with them, who are being powered by Meliodas' negative demonic energy, and in desperation, Melascula attempts to force all of the power into a single skeleton, but its bones are destroyed from too much power. That's just the laws of physics. Meliodas taunts her failed plan, but returns it with an alternate plan. She uses her magic to allow the angry souls of the city's population to possess Deanne, causing her to have red and bloody eyes from having multiple souls in her body and from being extremely hostile. They use Deanne as their host to attack the others and even go so far as to hurt Deanne's body, but are momentarily stopped when Helbram, the one who killed the people of Corand, offers them to have their revenge by destroying the helmet he possessed. But that's not enough to satisfy their rage, and the deceased souls begin causing destruction. They're finally forced out of Deanne when Elizabeth steps in. Melascula's angered by this and tells Meliodas that she'll go out there to kill her personally. Meliodas is pushed against the wall by the thought of Elizabeth dying and is forced to let go of all of his human emotions and return to his original personality to unlock complete power. The Attack Titan, the Assault mode. The cost is him returning to his true self from 3,000 years ago, the most savage-hearted demon in existence. He destroys the Cocoon of Darkness and is now a danger to anyone and everyone. Escanor challenges him, and Merlin puts a perfect cube around them to protect the others while Escanor attempts to pacify him. Meliodas, having lost his memories, tells Escanor that a human can't talk to the greatest warrior of the demon clan like that, angering him. The two fight, and Meliodas has a big advantage over Escanor despite it being so close to noon. Meliodas seems to have won when he crosses Escanor with Lostvayne and releases a hellblaze through his belly. Escanor manages to recover thanks to the sun, though. Although Escanor takes some confidence when his power increases to 114,000, Meliodas quickly incapacitates him from a single blow. The fight is resumed, and although Escanor manages to disarm Meliodas and beat him, he ends up defeating him by full countering his cruel son and giving him a coup de grace. Escanor is finally able to defeat Meliodas in a single attack, rendering him unconscious, but causes even worse damage to himself. Merlin is responsible for transporting Meliodas to the Boar Hat with her telekinesis, although Elizabeth insists on healing him. Merlin counters this by saying, well, what if Meliodas tries to attack them? Already in the Boar Hat, Merlin is forced to leave Meliodas unconscious when he manages to recover from his wounds in battle and then encloses him with Elizabeth in her perfect cube. Prelude to the new Holy War arc. While Meliodas remained unconscious with Elizabeth inside the perfect cube, his old master Chandler appears suddenly, having gone in search of him. After he undoes the perfect cube and incapacitates Merlin, Meliodas and Elizabeth are removed by Deanne. While the other Sins are involved in a battle against Chandler, Meliodas remains unprotected by Elizabeth, receiving one of Chandler's attacks during combat. In the end, Meliodas is returned to the Boar Hat and taken away along with all the others by Droll and Gloxinia, who sacrifice themselves to stop Chandler. Already in the Boar Hat, Meliodas begins to release a poisonous miasma that affects others, so Elizabeth decides to take him outside. Without anyone noticing, Meliodas briefly recovers the constriction and stole Greyroad's commandment while he was in Merlin's test tube. When Chandler reaches the Boar Hat, Meliodas wakes up with Elizabeth still holding on as Chandler bows to him. While Bond tries to tell him that he's their comrade, Meliodas affirms that he remembers the rest of the sins, so Elizabeth and Hawke decide not to kill them. However, he claims that the 7 deadly sins are disbanded to the shock of everyone. He also declares that to save Elizabeth from the curse, he has to become the new Demon King. After declaring a word of defiance to his father through the eyes of Hawke, Meliodas gives his last words to his companions that the days he spent with them were not bad. Meliodas leaves with Chandler, ignoring Elizabeth's pleas to not do something like this. Meliodas arrives at the castle of Camelot and meets with Zeldris, who complains of the traitor returning to them and begins to argue with Meliodas over who's going to become the next Demon King. Their discussion's interrupted when Estarossa appears and says he has no interest in the throne itself and more of the fight over it, and is shocked to see Elizabeth there. He instead decides that he wants Elizabeth, to which Meliodas declares that both the throne of the Demon King and Elizabeth belong to him alone. This triggers a confrontation between the three as Zeldris and Estarossa prepare to attack their estranged brother, but Meliodas is far too powerful for both of them together, even with the portion of their father's power that Zeldris has, and he effortlessly immobilizes the both of them. Elizabeth begs him to spare their lives, and he does, with Estarossa complimenting him for returning to his old self, but Zeldris is still pretty angry at Meliodas for his betrayal and claims that he doesn't care about the throne and only wants the power to save Elizabeth, and Meliodas doesn't deny the fact. Zeldris attempts to attack him once more, but Meliodas appears behind him and restrains him and whispers to his younger brother the reason for wanting the throne, and Zeldris begrudgingly agrees to help Meliodas, to the shock of Cusack and Peronia. Agreeing with Zeldris, Meliodas affirms that he's not going to reach the power of the Demon King, taking the power that he lends to Zeldris as initially planned. Zeldris asks Meliodas if he plans to train to reach their father's level of power, but he complains, saying that there's not enough time, and to save Elizabeth, he has to use the most immediate solution: absorb all of the 10 commandments into himself. Revealing Greyroad's commandment that he had stolen, in addition to those of Gloxinia, Droll, and Gother that Zeldris already had, Meliodas entrusts his brothers to go and collect the other commandments. Zeldris and Estarossa both go off to claim the other 4 commandments, while Meliodas stays behind to protect Elizabeth from Chandler and any other demons who might try to attack her. In another room, Elizabeth begs Meliodas to rethink things and ask the rest of the Sins for help. He says that this is the only way, but reveals the horrible truth that once he becomes the Demon King, he'll most likely no longer be able to stay in Britannia. Elizabeth tearfully asks then, what's the point of breaking the curse then? At which Meliodas realistically points out that he believes that her love for him is imprinted by the supreme deity, which angers and saddens her and makes her ask why doesn't he just find another girl to love. Surprisingly, Meliodas reverts to his human-like form and explains that Elizabeth is the only girl he's ever gonna love. She happily embraces him, but Meliodas then returns to his demon form and bluntly says that he felt nothing and that the promise he made to her 3,000 years ago is all he has left. Elizabeth decides that she's going to team up with the other Sins to stop Meliodas from absorbing the commandments and angrily slaps him into a wall with Arc before she runs off, promising to save him. Meliodas quickly runs in search of her, but he's unable to find her. Shortly after, Meliodas sees the light coming from the pact formed between Elizabeth and Ludociel, aware that the four archangels just joined the battle, looking serious. When Zeldris returns announcing his failure to recover Melascula's commandment due to Merlin's deception, it reveals that the four archangels had been revived. Meliodas confirms it by affirming that Elizabeth and the Sins had allied with them, leading Zeldris to make fun of Elizabeth for fleeing him. Meliodas says that none of that will matter once he's become the Demon King, as it would easily give him enough power to destroy all of their opposers. Sometime later, Arthur infiltrates the castle to retrieve the holy sword Excalibur and use it to free Camelot. I guess the standard Arthurian legend is just happening in the background of all of this? However, he's intercepted by Zeldris and Cusack before reaching it. There, Meliodas reveals himself to the young king, telling him that this is no longer a place for humans, but he gives him a chance to leave. When Arthur asks him why he's with these demons, Meliodas reveals that the man he knew no longer exists. Devastated by the betrayal of one of the most admired, Arthur unleashes his fury by taking Excalibur. Meliodas and Zeldris shudder to feel the strange magic coming from the sword. After surviving the exterminate ray of Chandler, Arthur manages to cut it in half with Excalibur, going on to do the same with Cusack. Surprised, Meliodas and Zeldris receive their attack as well, destroying a good part of the castle. After Arthur falls debilitated when not being able to support the power of Excalibur, Merlin appears at the last minute, saving Arthur with her icicle castle. Meliodas asks Merlin to return Melascula's commandment, but Merlin tells him that just as he tries to save Elizabeth, his friends and his beloved are giving everything to save him. Merlin tells him to not forget it before teleporting along with Arthur and Kath. New Holy War Arc. As time passes and Estarossa doesn't return from his search, Meliodas decides to go ahead and absorb the 5 commandments he already has, including Zeldris's. Meliodas tells Zeldris that he has to deliver the other 5 before half a day after he's absorbed the others to properly complete the ritual to obtain the powers. Meliodas proceeds to absorb the 5 commandments after giving Zeldris an apology for the kind of older brother he was. In order to properly absorb the commandments, Meliodas locks himself in a cocoon and releases a large sphere of darkness around the castle of Camelot, passing under the protection of Zeldris, Chandler, and Cusack. In Purgatory, Meliodas' emotions and soul, after an indeterminate time wandering, almost lost his self, having become a dragon-like black creature. Bon, who was in Purgatory for centuries searching for Meliodas' emotions, and the Beast fight fiercely and continuously for another few decades until it comes to a halt, surprising Bon, who believes that the creature grew fond of him. Bon wonders where Meliodas could be in this place and expresses his desire to see his woman again. Then a voice agrees with him. Bon looks for the source of that voice when he notices that the dragons disappeared. It's revealed that the dragon was actually Meliodas' emotions all along, who seems to have gone back to their true state, still longing to be reunited with Elizabeth. Bon greets Meliodas when he wakes up. Meliodas and Bon start talking about Purgatory. When Bon reveals that he went there to look for him, Meliodas asks if he knows a way out. Bon realizes that he never really considered how he was going to get back. Meliodas is disappointed in his stupidity, asking how he would throw himself into Purgatory without even thinking of an escape strategy. But Bon says that he couldn't leave him alone in such a place. Meliodas is happy to at least have his friend with him in that horrible place, to which both of them are, as pleased as they could be. Bon and Meliodas decide to get going and find a way to get back. Meliodas suggests that before that they should look for something to cover their nudity. But Bon reminds him that in this place, even armor ends up disintegrating, so there's not really any point. Meliodas then shows him the 2 kinds of creatures that inhabit Purgatory. One of them, an alien species which evolved to survive in Purgatory, can be used to make suitable clothing. That's awfully convenient. Bon tries to capture one of these creatures, but his speed allows him to avoid it completely and go after Meliodas. Seeing how the creature manages to knock him down easily, Bon asks him what happened with this monstrous force. Meliodas understands that being only the emotions of the real Meliodas, he'll only end up delaying Bon. Even so, Bon affirms that he's going to carry him with him. He tries to use his fox's hunt on the creature, but it still avoids it with its speed. Bon takes chase, being unable to catch it. Taking a rest, Meliodas asks him how much he must have suffered in Purgatory with a body of flesh. Bon tells him that he lost count of how many times he was about to surrender, spending the first 100 years reliving from burning to ashes, frozen to the bone, and rotting from deadly poisons. There, Bon manages to wait and use a quick blow to finally kill the creature. While making new clothes with the skin of the creature, Meliodas thanks Bon, saying that he's incredible. Bon tells him that when Merlin told him that the Demon King had captured him, he hoped he was locked up somewhere. Meliodas explains that at first it was like that, but in the end he managed to escape, but ended up giving up on finding a way out and became a monster. Bon asks him if the Demon King was okay with letting him wander with the possibility of finding the exit, giving Meliodas the conclusion that the Demon King is the one who watches the exit of Purgatory. After finishing their new clothes, Bon and Meliodas decide to start their escape mission. While touring Purgatory, Bon asks Meliodas what he wants to do first after having returned to the real world. Meliodas tells him that he wants to break Elizabeth's curse and drink enough to fill his eyes. Bon has a similar plan, but it involves reviving Elaine and bathing in his drink of choice. Several monsters attack them, rendering Meliodas unable to fight and trapped by them. There, Bon manages to save him and uses Crazy Hunt to kill all the monsters. Noticing the presence of another, Bon kills him from a distance, affirming that the flesh of that creature is the most delicious. While they eat that creature's flesh, Bon mentions that they don't need to eat, being immortal souls in fake bodies, but that doing it makes them feel more alive. Meliodas says that even though they've spent 500 years without seeing each other, he doesn't stop being surprised at his ability to adapt to things. Bon mentions that burns and frostbite have stopped affecting him and that he can breathe rotten air without problems now. Meliodas declares that he's the only human who's survived so long in Purgatory and retained his rationality. Bon says that this is due to his immortality, but Meliodas remarks that with that it wouldn't be enough. Bon believes that it's because he was raised in a horrible environment as a child, but Meliodas doesn't believe that that's related either. There, both notice the presence of some individual observing them. Meliodas launches to attack this spy with his sword, but all of his thrusts are avoided. Bon tries to catch him, but the spy just leaves his hand on the bones and catching him in the back. Bon asks if he's a subordinate of the Demon King. The spy denies it, but says he can take them both to the Demon King if they both help him too. When asked what he wants help with, Bon and Meliodas are shocked to see that this individual posing as Wild looks identical to Hawk. Wild declares themselves to be a warrior in search of his younger brother. Bon and Meliodas wonder if this brother is Hawk. Wild says that his brother is called Mild, but that having been sent to another world since he was born, he might not remember his real name. Realizing that Hawk could be his brother, Wild breaks into tears of joy. After passing the sandstorm, Bon, Wild, and Meliodas go to the Demon King's location. On their way, Bon asks how long the Demon King has been in Purgatory. Wild tells him that he's been there long before he was born, millions of years ago. And Meliodas says that the time corresponds with the 3,000 years of the living world. When Meliodas says that he's a good older brother, Bon asks why he should be. Upon learning that he also has a younger brother, Bon asks him about Zeldris. Meliodas stops to talk to Bon and Wild about their younger brothers, Zeldris and Estarossa. Bon is surprised to learn that Estarossa is his brother, claiming they have no resemblance, to which Meliodas says there's not much he can do to help Estarossa with that. When Wild asks about Estarossa, Bon reproaches him. There, Meliodas begins to feel strange about his memories of Estarossa. Suddenly, a voice interrupts him, claiming that he doesn't remember anything about Estarossa either. This is revealed to be the Demon King. After Wild fails to attack him, the Demon King unleashes a blow on all three. Bon manages to evade and catch Meliodas half-fallen, surprised by the incredible power of the Demon King. Bon uses his physical hunt on him, but to his surprise, his energy is being absorbed instead. Upon falling from his exhausted strength, Bon is caught by Meliodas after the Demon King threw lightning bolts all over the place. Bon wonders what kind of magical power the Demon King possesses, which was able to render useless his snatch and Meliodas' full counter, as well as Wild's attacks. Meliodas reveals the power of his father, also called the Demon King, as the Ruler. There, both the Demon King and Meliodas talk about the memories of Estarossa, when Meliodas tells him that while Estarossa was his son, he was born without the power of darkness and a weak-hearted coward who wouldn't even kill a single insect. The Demon King contemplates that part by saying that he took pity on him and gave him a commandment, shocking Meliodas. The Demon King then realizes that Gother is behind this, as he was the only commandment who betrayed the king, and was the only one who can do so. While 60 years pass in Purgatory, the trio still battles the Demon King, being defeated every single time they charge at him. After their 6,093rd defeat, the three stop to eat. Meliodas begins to think that maybe Elizabeth won't die if he doesn't return, but Bon convinces him that they shouldn't surrender until they escape and can eliminate the curse of Elizabeth and revive Elaine. Bon and the others return to launch themselves against the Demon King once more, only for the same succession of events that lead to being easily defeated by the rulers repeated. When they're thrown away, Bon discovers that his powers could also heal, as Wild's wounds had been healed by him not giving some of his own life, a fact that develops after the 60 years of his power being absorbed by the Demon King. However, upon analyzing what happened during their fights, they also discovered how to get around the Demon King's power, and they charge at him once again. Bon, instead of using his snatch to try to steal the strength of the Demon King, uses it to give him his own power instead. This surprisingly ends up weakening the Demon King. Meliodas reveals that the ruler reverses the effects of enemy abilities, turning damage and debilitation into power and healing. Ban uses his infinite life to keep weakening the Demon King to allow Meliodas and Wild to reach the exit of Purgatory. However, the Demon King manages to revert the effect by switching off his power. Meliodas then tries to battle the Demon King himself, as the gate to the real world has been revealed now. Infuriated, the Demon King rages on about how Meliodas defied his father, but Meliodas coldly tells the king that he's no longer his father and is not able to understand why he keeps referring to Meliodas' emotions as a failure. The two trade blows, with the Demon King parrying every blow with his massive sword with ease while telling his son it's because of Meliodas' emotions destroying his plans of passing on the mantle of the King of Demons onto his own son, which Meliodas scoffs at, telling his father he's more of a destroyer than Meliodas ever was. Wild decides to use Wild Full Throttle, ultimately leading to his death, as this technique is considered by him to be his trump card, consuming all of his life force to increase his power. With this technique, he's able to hold off the Demon King, giving Ban and Meliodas a chance to escape. As they descend towards the real world, Ban and Meliodas lament that in the end, Wild and Hawk won't be able to meet. However, the Demon King manages to grab Meliodas from Purgatory to prevent him from escaping. Meliodas assures Ban not to worry about him and that he'll escape by his own means. The Demon King's arm is severed, and he's shocked that Meliodas has the power to destroy his body. The Demon King says he can't allow Meliodas to go back since he'll ruin all of his plans. This puts a big dumb smile on Meliodas' face, commenting that he's never seen the Demon King so panicked before. Back in the real world, during the battle against Zeldris and the original demon, Meliodas' cocoon finally absorbs the other 5 commandments. Although Merlin managed to stop the time of the cocoon, her efforts are in vain as Meliodas, who has already completed the process of absorbing all of the commandments, becoming the Demon King, breaks free before the spell takes place. As his powers completely engulf the surroundings in darkness, leaving everyone shocked by his overwhelming strength, Elizabeth shakily asks Meliodas if that's still him. Meliodas, now looking like an adult, smiles. However, he's revealed to have been turned into his father's vessel, revealing that it was the Demon King's plan from the beginning to create the commandments and have Meliodas absorb them to take his young and stronger body for himself. However, when Ban appears to face the Demon King, Meliodas also resurges inside his body, where he starts a fight with his father. However, Meliodas is backed by Elizabeth and the Sins, who enter the spiritual world thanks to Gothar's magic. As Meliodas can't believe that they're there, Merlin assures him that he's not dreaming. They are there, in flesh and bone. Or, actually, they're spiritual bodies, but, whatever. Elizabeth tells Meliodas not to surrender and that they'll be his strength. When meeting, Elizabeth can finally tell Meliodas that she loves him, and Meliodas asks her if he looks any older after having spent a millennium in Purgatory. The Demon King is infuriated by their presence and attacks with the intention of eliminating them. However, Meliodas repels his attack and knocks him down with several holes in the chest. At the doors of his demise, the Demon King begins to fly across the battlefield in a state of madness, in a desperate attempt to take Meliodas to death with him. Ban manages to intercept and stop his death throes, and then sends him flying with a kick. King, Elizabeth, and Merlin then combine their techniques into their combined technique, Triple Poison, leaving the Demon King trapped. This, however, manages to break him free in a berserk state. There, Deanne surprises him with Diamond Tower, giving Ban the opportunity to give the Demon King the final blow. With a strong blow, the Demon King is finally defeated and erased from the body of Meliodas. With the real Meliodas back again in his body, Ban says that he's beaten to hell and back. In this case, quite literally. Elizabeth goes with the rest of the Sins and heals Meliodas and Ban's bodies. Despite their victory, the Sins are saddened that with the destruction of the Demon King, they've missed the opportunity to break Elizabeth's curse. She tells them that this is already done, that what she most wanted was for Meliodas to be the same since she would never see him again if he became the Demon King. There, Meliodas surprises everyone by claiming that he acquired the power to break the curse while escaping from Purgatory. Despite the dissonance of this and Ban over the true meaning of him acquiring such power, Merlin uses her curse Discovery for the curses of Meliodas and Elizabeth to take physical form. There, Meliodas assumes the appearance he had when he was the Demon King and tells Elizabeth that despite making her wait 3,000 years, he's going to finally fulfill the promise he made her. Elizabeth asks if he'll continue to love her forever after this, to which Meliodas assures that he'll do it until she gets tired of him first. Meliodas easily destroys the two curses, and with that, Elizabeth embraces him with joy since his long journey is ended, but then it's rectified that their trip together has only just begun. Demon King Arc. With the defeat of the Demon King and the curses destroyed, the Holy War finally ends and the Sins return to Leonis. Ban and Meliodas find Hawk in an alley eating garbage, asking what he's doing in a place like this. Hawk tries to convince him that he's just another pig, but Meliodas says that there aren't any other talking pigs, so this lie's not really panning out for Hawke. When he tells her that Elizabeth is worried about the way that he's acting, Hawke admits that he feels pathetic for not having been any help during the Holy War and had to be saved by Bon and Elizabeth. Bon and Meliodas comfort him by saying that despite knowing that he's weak, he always puts his life in danger without hesitation to protect his friends, which is a test of true bravery. A moved Hawke tries to hug them, but they avoid him because, he's covered in garbage, snot, and tears, which is pretty reasonable. Even so, the two sing him the song that Wild taught them in Purgatory. The three of them then attend the party at the new Boar Hat. The day after the end of the Holy War, Meliodas joins the Sins in the Boar Hat on their journey to stalking up across Britannia. As they set up a picnic, the women wait while the men go find food in the forest. Meliodas then accompanies his companions to urinate together, as you do. When Meliodas says that they have to return, everyone worries that Meliodas might be keeping a secret. Bon tells Meliodas that they're not as fragile as he believes, prompting him to reveal the truth that soon he's going to disappear from this world, something that everyone but Hawke was already beginning to suspect. Hawke asks where he plans to go, but Meliodas says that he's going to go to the Demon Realm where he was born to be the first to establish a tavern there. While their trip resumes, Elizabeth worries that everyone is quiet and depressed. Meliodas insists it's just because they're tired because they haven't gone out to restock in a long time. Elizabeth takes him aside, claiming that their conversations had taken away everyone's urge to speak. Gowther and Merlin realize that they're not actually heading to Leonis, which Meliodas reveals that he intends to make a stop earlier, in what remains of Edinburgh Castle. Meliodas asks everyone to wait while he goes, but Elizabeth decides to accompany him. The two fly inside the huge crater created 12 years ago, where they find a large sphere of darkness, revealing itself to be where the vampire Gelda was sealed by Meliodas. Meliodas releases Gelda from the seal, to which she laments about how she wished it were Zeldris who were the one to do it. As she's about to fall into despair, Meliodas interrupts her and quickly tells her how Zeldris wanted to see her and that she was his only hope. She responds that, although they love each other, what he really wanted was to become the new Demon King. Meliodas confirms this, explaining how Zeldris wanted to be the new Demon King to create a peaceful system so that he and Gelda could be together without any repercussions from anyone. Gelda notes that Meliodas is referring to Zeldris in the past tense and asks where Zeldris is. Meliodas answers that Zeldris went missing after the battle with the Demon King. After learning this, Gelda leaves to go find him herself, stating that she doesn't care where he is in the world and asks if Elizabeth can understand where she's coming from. Elizabeth questions how he knows her, and Gelda tells her that everyone knows her name in the magical realm. Upon returning to Leonis, Meliodas goes with his friends to a meeting organized by King Bartra. There, he asks Meliodas to marry Elizabeth and become the king, which makes Meliodas comedically do a spit take. The king ensures that Elizabeth will have no objection, but she says that she can't accept. Everyone is stunned when Elizabeth reveals that she plans to go to the demon realm with Meliodas. Meliodas is of course reluctant to this, claiming to regret it now that she's human. However, Elizabeth says that she's determined to do it. The Sins meet in the Boar Hat discussing what happened. Meliodas agrees with Merlin that Elizabeth was always that determined, even when she presented him with Stigma 3,000 years ago. Gowther asks him if he has any regrets in that world. Meliodas says he would have liked to see his son have a scuffle with Bon, but he also has a mountain of regrets. Since even though the war was stopped for the time being, the hatred between the Demon Clan and the other races hasn't completely disappeared, not to mention those lost during the war, including Arthur, who Meliodas claims to have been a magnificent king. Meliodas laments over how he's spent the last millennia only worrying about how to break the curses, and as a result has let his only brother die twice. He says that he deserves to be in hell for everything he's done. The Sins deny that by claiming that he's a good person and that he saved them all now and in the past. Meliodas thanks them for affirming that he is who he is today thanks to the fact that the 6 of them were always there for him. There, Meliodas declares that the 7 deadly sins officially have disbanded. Again. The next day, Elizabeth and Meliodas have an emotional farewell at the entrance to the Demon Realm. However, before being able to cross the entrance, a gigantic rock is detached from a nearby boulder and falls over Elizabeth, seemingly crushing her to death. Everyone, especially Meliodas, can't help but look with horror at the curse that was not broken after all. However, Elizabeth is saved at the last minute by Merlin, who teleported her to safety just in time. Meliodas then uses Curse Discovery to reveal that Elizabeth's curse was restored. Meliodas tries to destroy it once more, but as soon as he does, the curse regenerates again. Meliodas concludes that this is because as the curse was put on by the Demon King, it continues to exist. After all, the Demon King is still alive. Merlin wonder how that can be, given that the commandments have no vessel. King and Deanne wonder who could be able to withstand the commandments when not even Mael was able to sustain 4 of them. Elizabeth and Meliodas conclude that Zeldris, the only one besides Meliodas capable of resisting the commandments, has become the vessel of the Demon King. Elizabeth and the Sins return to the Boar Hat to discuss the situation of the Demon King still being alive. When Merlin asks who can be the new vessel of the Demon King, Meliodas claims not to know. He then asks her if she closed the entrance to the demon realm, to which Merlin assures that it will soon cease to exist, and that anyway, with the entrance being just the size for a person to pass, not even the white demons could cross it easily. There, everyone feels that the entrance to the demon realm is being opened again, which Merlin recognizes is to invoke a fearsome Endura demon. King asks Hawk and Escanor to report the situation to the king, and the Great Holy Knight and Bon state that he and the other Sins will face the Endura, while Meliodas protects Elizabeth since he's the only one with the power to do it. On the way, Elizabeth asks Meliodas if they're going to go where the Demon King awaits them, to which Meliodas says they go to Lake Salisbury, the greatest concentration of magic in Britannia, where the Demon King must be recovering the power he lost in the battle against the Sins, and to get the full assimilation of his vessel. Elizabeth assures him that Zeldris is waiting for him and that they can save him. Meliodas remembers the occasion when he argued with Zeldris 3,000 years ago about his desertion of the Demon Clan. Upon reaching the lake, Meliodas and Elizabeth confront the Demon King. As a tremendous lightning storm strikes, the Demon King claims that the environment is enraged because it doesn't need the existence of two Demon Kings. Meliodas replies there shouldn't even be one Demon King. Warning him to prepare, Meliodas claims to throw all of his feelings into his face, so he launches and exchanges a blow with the Demon King. After retiring to the sky, the Demon King exclaims that he never expected Meliodas to become so much of a failure. He asks him if he really intends to eliminate his brother and then erase his own existence. Meliodas denies it by claiming that he'll be the only one to disappear and that Zeldris will indeed save him. Annoyed, the Demon King launches a blast of darkness that doesn't hit Meliodas but raises a cloud of steam from the water that gives him the cover to catch Elizabeth and take her hostage. The Demon King boasts of his error in bringing her and that given his desire to protect her at all costs, reactivated the curse, he only has to use it as a shield until he regains the power of his original being. However, Elizabeth laughs that he's wrong if he thinks that it was only to delay Meliodas, but that she did it to defeat him. Elizabeth then wraps him in her arc. The Demon King claims that this pathetic technique will not affect him, but Elizabeth uses Manipulate and Burst and shakes him all over the place, and finally uses a big explosion that leaves him wounded. Meliodas warns him that he'll know a world of pain if he underestimates Elizabeth just like he did long ago, reminding him of the name they used to give him in the underworld, Blood-Stained Ellie. As Meliodas jumps towards him, the Demon King engages in a sword fight with him, receiving a heavy blow. The Demon King tries to respond, but Meliodas eludes him and sends him flying with an impact from Lostvayne. As the darkness comes out of his body, the Demon King says that Meliodas is so concerned about his brother that he's not using his full power, and in fact, his original power as Demon King is recovering and increasing thanks to the magic lake. As the Demon King stands with a bigger and stronger body, he declares that the only possible conclusion is his victory. Meliodas then uses Kami Chigiri, but the Demon King absorbs all of the flames using the ruler. He says that he expected nothing less from the body that he chose as a vessel, and how it's a great opportunity to test his power. Suddenly, the Demon King notices that something is approaching at high speed. This is a result of the heads of the Endura that Bon, King, Deanne, Gother, and Merlin had launched towards him. Meliodas wonders why they're here, to which Elizabeth says that of course they'd come for him. With the arrival of the five sins, Bon reminds Meliodas of the seventh rule of the seven deadly sins: come together and work as a team every now and then. As the Demon King is taken back by Merlin and Elizabeth's combination, Merlin tells Gother to take Meliodas inside the Demon King's soul and detach him from Zeldris while they distract him. Once inside what Meliodas recognizes as the place where he used to hunt dragons with Zeldris, Gother guides him towards the direction they feel a presence. Gother warns him that since they're in the spiritual world of Zeldris and the Demon King, they can't come into contact with either of them or they'll be expelled as intruders. Gother and Meliodas finally find Zeldris, taken prisoner of a flashing Gelda. Meliodas screams to wake him up. Seeing him, Zeldris asks what he's doing there, to which Meliodas replies that he's come to save him. Zeldris asks him if he's gone crazy, to which Meliodas says, yeah. The fake Gelda tries to convince Zeldris of the lies about her death at Meliodas' hands and that she's the only one who loves him. Despite this, Zeldris realizes that he's talking to a fake Gelda. The Demon King covers the place with fog while calling Zeldris a fool for following the same path as his brother. He then creates many illusions of Zeldris. Meliodas pretends to cut every string until he finds the real one, but Gother jumps to stop him, receiving Meliodas' slash and falling onto one of the illusions, making it disappear. Gother reminds Meliodas that if he stimulates even a single string, he'll be recognized as a foreign object and forcibly removed, just like him. As Gother fades away from the spiritual world, he tells Meliodas that the only way to save Zeldris is to distinguish the real one from the illusions. There, the true Gelda appears in the spiritual world, determined to find the true Zeldris. Despite all the Zeldrises affirming that they're the real one, of course, Gelda recognizes the true Zeldris in an instant. Zeldris asks incredulously if she's real, to which Gelda reacts angrily that he's not able to distinguish her from a false one. A frightened Zeldris is excused that he meant that he couldn't believe she was there. Meliodas asks her how she was able to distinguish the real Zeldris, to which Gelda tells him that he could do the same if it were Elizabeth, something that Meliodas understands. Which is also a great way to not actually answer that question, Gelda! Before Gelda can free Zeldris, though, the fake ones, still controlled by the Demon King, attack her. However, Meliodas shields her by saying that Zeldris needs her more than anyone else and that he leaves him in her hands, and tells Zeldris that he must prepare to stand and defeat the Demon King. With the use of his Kami Chigiri, Meliodas destroys the false ones and frees Zeldris. When Elizabeth's curse is about to kill her with a bolt of lightning from the sky, Meliodas returns from the spirit world in time to full counter the Demon King. Everyone's glad for his return, and Meliodas apologizes for keeping them waiting, but states that it's time to show the Demon King the true power of the 7 deadly sins. When Deanne uses her mother creation against the Demon King, he says that there's no way for her to defeat him. Meliodas and Elizabeth claim that he's wrong because Deanne is the kind of person that always thinks of others first, no matter what happens to her, and that he'd be very afraid to get on her bad side. Pretty sure he was already on her bad side, to be honest. After noticing that he's in a place that he doesn't recognize, Meliodas says that this is his last resting place, since the Sins are about to launch their mission to defeat the Demon King, now that without the lake, he's lost his ability to recover magic. Escanor points out that he has even more bad news for him. It's high noon! The Demon King proceeds to bury a blow to Escanor in the womb, but surprisingly, Escanor's power doesn't diminish despite having spent his time as the One. Deanne and King wonder how it's possible for him to continue as the One, to which Meliodas reveals that Escanor is turning his own vital force into magical power, basically burning his own life. Combining their techniques, the Sins manage to destroy the Monster of Darkness. With the Demon King practically defeated both in the spirit world and in the real world, the commandments begin to leave Zeldris' body until they completely detach from him, allowing Zeldris to recover his physical body. However, the Demon King's conscience refuses to let his vessel go and tries to retrieve it. However, Bond snatches Zeldris away before the commandments can possess him again. Meliodas thanks him for all that, to which Bond tells him that he owes him 10 rounds of Aberdeen Ale. Enraged, the Demon King rises, and the commandments disperse into the surrounding area, beginning to take over every living being, rock, and hill. Thus, the Demon King stands with a new, gigantic, and monstrous vessel created from the same land of Britannia. As the Sins launch their attack, the Demon King uses Death Zero to immobilize them with gravity pressure. Meliodas launches his Trillion Dark along with the other Sins' strongest techniques that Merlin combines into a single powerful attack using Power Full Conversion. Meliodas sends the attack back to the Demon King, killing him once and for all. In the resultant destruction, Meliodas saves Elizabeth from a flying boulder and advises Gelda that Mael had already helped Zeldris. While watching his friends talk randomly, Meliodas is asked by Zeldris about how the combined attack with enough power to destroy Britannia affects only the Demon King. Meliodas then shows him the water that remains from Lake Salisbury, which has absorbed all the excess power from their attack. Meliodas then goes to throw all his power to the commandments to completely destroy them along with the Demon King. As everything ends, Meliodas declares that it's at last time for a celebratory drink and invites Zeldris to join them. Zeldris says that he doesn't want to be around people, but he'll think about it if it's one-on-one. While everyone watches Zeldris and Gelda fly away, Escanor says it's time to do the same because everyone's waiting for them. Sad, they say they must all return together, showing that everyone has already seen that Escanor is about to die since his body is burned to the point that it disintegrates and can no longer move. Escanor says that he has no regrets in his life and is grateful for having met everyone. He gives each person a few last words. He tells Meliodas that he owes him all his life and that he's a true friend who has no equal. As Escanor disintegrates away, Meliodas wishes him to rest in peace. King of Chaos Arc. Upon returning to Leonis, the Sins join the celebration banquet in the castle. Deanne happily states that all the Sins have achieved their goals, mentioning that Meliodas will no longer have to leave this world as he relinquished his power as Demon King to destroy the commandments. She ends up realizing that she never knew what Merlin's goal was since she never talked to them about it, but King and Bond stress that she couldn't have been working 3,000 years for nothing. Merlin then declares that as comrades of fate, everyone deserves to know and see it. Merlin then teleports the Sins and Elizabeth to Lake Salisbury, where they find Hawk Mama in front of the orb of water that used to be the lake. Merlin says that it's time to start. When Meliodas asks her what is about to start, Merlin surprises everyone by declaring that she refers to Arthur's awakening. Meliodas wonders if she means to revive him. There, Hawk jumps over Meliodas and cries out to everyone for abandoning him, to which he apologizes. As the lake water begins to shine and its light reaches Excalibur, Merlin tells Arthur that she was wrong, since the sword was not the one that would kill him, but the key to advancing to his new stage. After an explosion of light, Arthur wakes up having been revived. However, he begins to act strangely as his body aches. Merlin says that humans are the most polarizing of all races because they possess qualities of good and light at the same time as evil and darkness. Their very existence is essence of contradiction, and this contradiction is a form of chaos. She declares the human chosen by the priestess of chaos will become the ruler of chaos. Meliodas asks Merlin to tell him what she did to Arthur, to which she replies that she's already told him. Her goal was to awake Arthur, but as the king of chaos. As his eyes turn black, Arthur starts screaming desperately in pain, to which Meliodas flies to help him. However, seeing him, Arthur remembers that the last time he saw him, he had betrayed his companions and allied with the Demon Clan. There he hears the voice of Arthur, who, wrapped in great darkness, laments the fact that Meliodas betrayed him. There, Merlin hugs him and tells him that Meliodas didn't betray him and that he shouldn't let his powers consume him. Arthur then manages to calm down, and reality returns to normal. Merlin tells him that the Meliodas of that time wasn't the real one. Arthur insists that he betrayed everyone, but Merlin explains that he misunderstood him, and the proof is the fact that the Sins and Elizabeth are there with him. After meeting with Meliodas and the Sins, Arthur apologizes for his mistake, to which Meliodas says that he should apologize. Merlin declares that Arthur commands chaos and that he's the king who will lead Britannia into a new world. Arthur is very confused by what Merlin says. Meliodas asks why she awakened to power that is both a blessing and a curse and demands to know what her desire is. The voice from the lake asks to be allowed to explain instead of Merlin about the desire made by a single lonely witch who wandered the land in search of chaos. Meliodas asks the voice to tell him who it is and to show itself. The being, revealing herself as the Lady of the Lake and the Priest of Chaos, apologizes for not being able to leave the lake. Meliodas says that in 3,000 years he had never heard of any being from Chaos except from Merlin a few moments ago. The Lady of the Lake reveals that this is because Merlin hid that truth from everyone. Meliodas asks her what she's talking about, which leads the Lady of the Lake to narrate Merlin's past and her love for Meliodas, who was never reciprocal. The Lady of the Lake finally explains that Merlin dedicated her life to resuscitating a being known as Chaos, the one who created the world and the 5 races, and for that, she used the 7 deadly sins to destroy the Demon King. The Lady of the Lake also reveals that Merlin was the one who asked the giants to create the Coffin of Eternal Darkness to seal the Demon King and the Supreme Deity. And recently, it was also Merlin who deliberately destroyed her coffin for the Demon King to possess Meliodas, that she was the one who reactivated Elizabeth's curse after Meliodas destroyed it, and finally made Meliodas launch their combined attack on the lake, all in order to achieve her goal. Meliodas tells Merlin to look him in the eye and asks if she really tried to kill Elizabeth. Merlin replies that since Meliodas' only objective was to break Elizabeth's curse, he could have abandoned the mission of destroying the Demon King after he had accomplished it, something that she couldn't allow. Meliodas asks furiously if she reactivated the curse for that reason, to which Merlin replies that she also saved Elizabeth. When Meliodas reproaches Merlin for using the 7 deadly sins to revive a being that may never exist, the Lady of the Lake states that chaos exists and that they have already been face to face with it for a long time. When no one seems to understand, the Lady of the Lake reveals that they've been traveling on it all of this time, and it's been waiting for her resurrection, leaving everyone shocked to see that she refers to Hawk Mama. There, Hawk Mama is revealed to be a moss shell whose content, chaos, is now inside Arthur. Understanding that the strange magic that Arthur unconsciously used was chaos, Meliodas asks Merlin to return Arthur to normal, to which Merlin replies that it's impossible, given that chaos has chosen to coexist within Arthur, which proves that he's the true king of chaos. Arthur then asks them to stop arguing. As Arthur begins to talk about his feelings for the Sins and Merlin, the magic begins to alter reality again. Kath then leaves the Boar Hat happy to see Arthur. However, the Lady of the Lake is alarmed by its presence and tells Merlin not to let it approach. As Kath ends up wanting to devour Arthur and he's saved by Meliodas, Kath tears Arthur's arm off and devours it, acquiring a monstrous transformation. Meliodas tells everyone to get a hold of Kath, and the Lady of the Lake tells him that they must retrieve their arm or they'll soon know how powerful even a fragment of chaos is. While Elizabeth heals Arthur, the Lady of the Lake reveals the true identity of the monster Epilogue, who was after the power of chaos within Arthur. Meliodas warns Bond to be careful since they don't know the true power of Epilogue. The monster then asks an affected Arthur if he can eat him now, creating a pocket dimension with the fragment of chaos he had devoured, sucking Arthur, Elizabeth, and the Sins into it. After Arthur destroys the dimension and Cathpalag with a new Excalibur, he faints from tiredness in Merlin's arms. Elizabeth tells Merlin that they should take him to the kingdom, but Merlin just thanks her for healing him, and before Elizabeth can reply, she teleports them all away, claiming that she can't keep up with them. As everyone is returned to Leonis, Elizabeth asks Meliodas what they should do about Merlin. Meliodas says that Merlin must be smiling while they talk. When Gother asks him what he plans to do to Merlin, everyone feels great magic in the direction that Arthur and Merlin are. When Cath, who is fighting Merlin, releases a large bunch of beams from his mouth over her, they're all reflected by Meliodas' full counter. Surprised, Merlin is healed by Elizabeth, asking both of them why they're there. Elizabeth tells her that it's not just them, revealing that all the other sins are with them. Merlin rushes to help Arthur, confirming that he's only unconscious. Meliodas then tells Merlin that they'll make her take responsibility for resuscitating Chaos, so she must devote the rest of her life to protecting and guiding Arthur. Merlin says he didn't have to come here to tell her that, since that was already her plan. Meliodas adds that they also have the responsibility of forgiving her foolishness, so he asks her to allow them to protect her. Merlin says that she's indebted to everyone. Cath starts to regenerate, stating that he's sick and tired of everyone always getting in his way. Bon and Meliodas interrupt, pretending to start the fight by saying that they've talked enough. Cath starts fighting, but is suddenly frozen in time by Merlin's chrono coffin. Merlin says that Chaos's power will allow him to free himself in perhaps a dozen years or a few centuries. Meliodas says they'll deal with it at the time, and then everyone says goodbye to go their separate ways. Meliodas and Elizabeth marry while they lament that no one else went to the ceremony since King and Deanne are marrying at Fairy Realm, Bon and Elaine are busy together, Gother and Hawk are out doing whatever it is they do, and Merlin and Arthur are rebuilding Camelot. Then suddenly, Meliodas is seen as the King of Leonis next to an old Elizabeth dying in a bed, lamenting that Bon died and they can't see King and Deanne. Elizabeth says it'll be the last time they're together since she no longer reincarnates and that they've had 3,000 years of happiness. A knight suddenly bursts in, warning Meliodas that Cath invades the kingdom. Cath then fights with Meliodas, mocking that he's alone because that in a chaotic world there are no constants, and everyone finally leaves as if they had never been. However, the voices of his loved ones tell Meliodas that he'll never be alone because their bonds will never break. This awakens Meliodas from the illusion, surprising Cathpalag. As Meliodas wakes up with everyone else in a trance, Arthur explains that he was in a vision of an uncertain future. Meliodas asks if he's okay, and Arthur tells him that they should look for a way to beat Cath. However, when Cath throws himself at them, Arthur says he's discovered how to beat him. He says that he'll devour him before he has a chance, invoking Chaos's power to open the dimension in his mouth. Arthur says that if he can't defeat him, then he'll absorb it and at the same time recover the chaos that he stole from him. Cathpalag is then completely absorbed. As everyone returns to reality, Bon asks if he regained the power that Cath stole, to which Arthur says he's not sure, but Merlin says that Chaos's power is back in full, and that what he has in his hand is the proof, surprising Arthur by seeing a new form of Excalibur. Meliodas admires the power of the sword, saying that it's perfect for those who want to create an everlasting kingdom. Arthur's ashamed to say that it was quite silly, but Meliodas encourages him that a man can't retract after saying a promise out loud, and that the objective he set is very wild and worthy of being accomplished. Meliodas tells him that he'll see him create the world he has in mind, and even if he takes the wrong path, the 7 deadly sins will be with him. Arthur thanks them by saying that they are his everlasting goal. Epilogue Arc. After defeating Cath and Merlin goes with Arthur to rebuild Camelot as an everlasting kingdom, the Sins reunite in the streets of Leonis as they decide to part in their own ways. When Elizabeth and Meliodas return to the castle, Bartra is pleased that Meliodas has decided to agree to marry Elizabeth and succeed him as king. 18 months later, Elizabeth and Meliodas have become the rulers of the kingdom as Elizabeth awaits the birth of their first child. She comments with Meliodas the reactions of Zeldris and Gelda when they find out, since they had never heard of the conception of a demon and a goddess, although she is technically half human. They name their son Tristan, and Elizabeth says that there's a great future waiting for him. As Meliodas looks out the window, he wonders what kind of future will come. 10 years later, Meliodas' son Tristan is seen running through the streets as he overhears the stories of how his father and colleagues were framed for attempting to overthrow the kingdom, and is found by Meliodas, who gathered Deanne, Bon, King, and Gother together. Seeing his son's belief that he and the others are criminals, he humors them by pretending to be the evil sinner he's told to be, shocking his son despite Deanne's disapproval and Bon's humor. However, Tristan rushes to his father with multiple attacks that are easily parried by Meliodas, who's surprised to hear Tristan's desire of becoming a holy knight due to his sense of justice. Meliodas then brings him outside along with Elizabeth and the others as the entire kingdom gathers to wish Tristan a happy 10th birthday. Despite seeing the admiration of the citizens, Tristan still sees his father as a short, irresponsible drinker that pervertedly gropes Elizabeth's boobs every day, to his mother's embarrassment. When Meliodas asks him what he wants as a present, Tristan claims he wants a legendary sword, but is quickly shot down. Gowther decides to give him a special present and uses his magic to show Tristan the entire story of the 7 deadly sins, making him shed a tear. The next day, Meliodas is seen sparring with his son, who blames him for not telling him the truth. When Elizabeth calls him over, Meliodas wonders what his son will be like when he grows up, and Tristan claims that nobody can tell the future, but he says he sees it a different way. The future is infinitely expanding, like the sky, that nothing is set in stone. He claims it's fine whatever Tristan wants to be it a knight or a king. But Tristan claims he already knows what he wants as the two walk forward. One of the 7 deadly sins. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out our other great videos on the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.